Ladies, gentlemen, friends beyond the binary, welcome to the Reactor. Bum bum. For today, August 7th, 2020. Can't believe we're already in August. What a year. What a year we've had. Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. For anybody who it's their first time here, your host here is named Tristan. I'm the host of Step Back History, a YouTube channel about history. That's pretty fun. I usually, my normal streaming schedule for all of this is going to be in Eastern Standard Time is Mondays from 12 to 2, Tuesdays from 7 to 10. That's Step Back Tonight. Monday is the show I do with Mia Mulder, which is called the Monday Discourse. And what you're watching right now, the Reactor, and the point of the Reactor is, it's a newer stream. I've only started it since I moved here, and it is a stream where people send me stuff either by using the Reactor channel on Discord or by going to hashtag StepBackReact on Twitter. I collect it in a big old pile, randomize it. That's a new thing I'm doing. Randomize it, so shuffle it all around, and then we watch and we talk about things. I will mention right now for everybody who might be angry about things. I don't do this stream on the last Friday of the month when I do a new video, and second. This video that I declare the right to click out or veto a video if I so choose, because I don't want to watch anything that is either going to platform hate or is boring. So those are the things I'm going to go with. So let's take a look at over in Chatland. So people say nice things about the music. I agree. Will there be nuclear Tristan takes? We'll see. We'll see what comes up. Looking smart, Snake. Thank you, Birdie. By the way, Birdie, who's in the chat on Twitch right now, made this piece of art. This is Birdie's art form. So they illustrate things for people, and they're pretty good at drawing things. So if you want art done, say you're a furry who wants a fursona or something, or you're a Dungeons and Dragons player, and you want to draw your character or the party, good person to go to. They're probably going to give a link in the chat, and for all the YouTubers, you can look at that link right there. It's hard to see because I'm bad at Twitch, but if you look at the bottom, you can see the link that's there. I'm good at making things look good, as you can tell by all of my very good-looking videos. Where it shows that I have an understanding of color, contrast, and lighting and basic film skills. Are you feeling okay? You sound different. I don't know. I don't know. To be honest, I have no clue. I have the volume turned down a little bit, but for the most part, I think I'm fine. I feel fine. It's actually a little cold in here, so maybe that's doing something, but who knows? Let's take... I'm still doing the open. I'm still doing the cold open. I got distracted. I go by he, him pronouns, and my work can be found at stepbackhistory.com or TristanPEJ on Twitter. For all of y'all on Twitch, if you have Amazon Prime... you just say you wanted to, like me, get caught up on The Expanse. I watched an episode of The Expanse last night, so that's why it's on my mind. If you watch The Expanse, or you get your free 2-day delivery, or whatever floats your boat. If you have Amazon Prime, there is something that you can do to help independent creators and not just make Jeff Bezos richer. Every Amazon Prime membership gives you one free Twitch Prime subscription every month that you can use to give an independent creator on Twitch some love, some joy, pay their rent, feed their cats, etc. And if you choose Step Back History, not only do you feed creatures like this one here, this is Phoebe, by the way, for anybody who's new. Phoebe's in chat for the Twitch audience, obviously. But also, you're contributing to this, which if I can get this up to 38, I believe, I get another emote. And wouldn't you guys like another emote? Hello. Of course, don't break the bank, but hey, if you're an Amazon Prime member, you already have it, so use it. And if you don't use it on me, use it on another Twitch creator that you're a big fan of. Okay. To what's next? If you guys haven't seen it, my latest video, which came out now 2 weeks ago, I want to say, no, 1 week ago, was on the history of Puerto Rico. It started off pretty rough, but it's now kind of going into a holding pattern, and it's actually it's not growing my channel, but it's doing solidly fine. It's now okay. I'll take it. It would have been pretty rough to look at like the 10 out of 10 thing for the rest of time, but that's okay. That's okay. And my next video, which I have scheduled to come out in 3 weeks from today, on the 28th, is on the assassination of William McKinley. And for everybody who's a patron, I am in talks to get Rob McDougall, the person who spoke with me on the video about the Republican Party, to come back and do an interview about the McKinley assassination. So we're going to have some good stuff on that. And with all that, I actually finished all of my get-through. And still in 8 minutes. Solid. Is the cat name known? Yes, this cat's name is Phoebe. She is very cute. She is a nice old lady. She is about 11 years old now. 10 or 11 years old. So, she's a little old lady. But, she gets lots of love on the internet. You've been doing a lot of interviews lately, Tristan. Kudos. Well, you know, I find that it changes up the flavor of the video a little bit. Can you do a video about ritual cannibalism for the rich? Ooh. I mean, I've done tons of videos on capitalism, so obviously. Okay. So I have a list now of 70 links. So, because like what happens, I don't know if this is tenable or not. I have to figure out what I'm going to do in the future. But I've just kept piling them up and shuffling them up every week. And there's been 2 weeks off now because the stream wasn't happening last week. So I guess it's just going to keep getting bigger and scarier until I have to do a purge or something. Who knows? We'll see what happens when it comes. Yes, needless to say, we are a most prolific community. That is true. A lot of you guys, a lot of you in the stream audience do contribute a lot to making these things good. Hey, Tris, as a student of history and politics, I really enjoy your students' love from Poland. Well, thank you, Zetmo. Much appreciated. My favorite painter is Polish. Was Polish. He is now dead. But, yeah. Just thought I would point that out. Friggin' Butzinski, I think is his name, something like that. I gotta remember his name. Let me just look him up. Gosh, what is his name? He's a Polish dark surrealist. Yeah, this guy, Beksinski, Zdzislaw Beksinski. That's my attempt. But this guy's art is fucking amazing. Like, let's show like some of these things. Like, look at this. Look at this. How can you not love these paintings? I mean, they're really spooky, but I think that they're fucking genius works of art. He's like the face of a genre of painting called dark surrealism. I think it's freaking amazing. I appreciate the respect for indigenous people you put in your videos. Well, thank you. Yeah, I thought about the other day of what if I just only called North America Turtle Island from now on. That would be pretty fun. Just going through these paintings. Oh man, God, this is my favorite painting. I would get a print of this and I would put it up somewhere. It's so good, so good. I love the little guy here for scale and everything like that. I'm sure nobody wants me to keep going on about my favorite Polish painter. And then I just realized I haven't even put. I realized that I didn't even put the screen up. So let's go through this. Let's actually do something more. Let's do that. So this is Back Tshirts. Sorry about not showing his stuff. So this is Back Tshirts. He's got this amazing like look to his art. Like I said, really spooky. Yeah, sorry I hadn't changed the scene. Like, look at this. His ability to create space and curiosity and just like, yeah. Like you can tell he was a Polish Jew during World War II, so he's got a lot of imagery and such like that. And this is the one that I said I would want to get printed. Back Tshirts. Are these album covers? No, this is the work of a painter, of a single painter, who was unfortunately, he was murdered in the early 90s, if I remember correctly. But yeah, fucking cool stuff. His stuff does look like this, like something you'd see on like a metal album cover, but it's not. But this is the kind of art that happens when you've seen a lot of death in your life, I think. Oh, man. All the racists getting mad you were using indigenous terminology from North America. I love it. Yeah, for sure. I hope so. Turtle. The thing about like calling North America Turtle Island for the rest of the time is that it would make I don't know if it would make racists as mad as I want, because the thing about saying Turtle Island and that kind of discourse is that it's way more of a thing in Canada than it is the United States. Canada's had more of like a public discourse on Indigenous rights stuff because Indigenous people are a higher percentage of our population, and like we've had like, you know, it's still in like very small circles. We're having conversations about, hey, Nick Zero, thank you for following. Welcome to the Orc Gang. Like we've had conversations in Canada already about whatchamacallit, like about land acknowledgements and like, you know, giving a non-colonial, post-colonial name to Turtle Island, that kind of thing. But that's been in Canada, and still it's not, and even then it's not like penetrated too much in Canada, but like America hasn't gotten there yet. So that'd be cool. So we're just, Back Tshirts. Oh man, yeah. I would not be surprised if a lot of metal, like this is an entire genre of art. Like this is called dark surrealism, and he's not the only person. I think the other like famous dark surrealist artist that you might be familiar with is a guy named H.R. Geiger. If you're not familiar, he's a if I remember correctly, he's a Swiss painter. Probably most well known for being the artist who designed the xenomorphs from like the Alien movies. Like here, I can show H.R. Geiger. So like this is H.R. Geiger's work. This is like the kind of like design of the aliens from Alien. He's unfortunately also passed away, and he's I think a Swiss artist. But man, I love this. I love this look. I love these things. Yeah. So, on that note, is all designed to be sexually evocative? Yeah, in kind of like a perverse way, I suppose. Yeah. Ooh, okay. How do you spell his name? Screen is too small for me. Which one? Geiger or Beksinski? I can put his name in the chat. There's his name. Hopefully that's going out. It's going out to the chat in a second. There you go. It's also got some of them special Polish letters too, so it's a bit, yeah. That's just a bunch of letters, Tristan. Come on. It's a lot of Zs. That's true. But yeah, Beksinski lived in Beksinski lived in communist Poland, and he died, I think, he died in 2005. Okay. I thought he died in the early 90s, but I guess he lived until 2005. I know that he was stabbed over some money his son owed or something like that. Yeah, he died on Christmas Eve 1999. All right. On Christmas Eve 1999, his son Tomas, a popular radio presenter, music journalist, and movie translator, committed suicide. Beksinski recovered his son's body. Unable to come to terms with his son's death, he kept an envelope for Tomek in case I kick the bucket pinned to his wall. In 2005, Beksinski was found dead in his flat with 17 stab wounds on his body. 2 of the wounds were determined to have been fatal. Robert Kupiec, the teenage son of his longtime caretaker and a friend, was arrested shortly after the crime. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison because before his death, Beksinski had refused to loan Robert Kupiec a couple hundred zloty, approximately $100 US. That's not a Z wasted. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's react to stuff. I've got way too many things to react to be talking about dark surrealist paintings. But they're so good. Look at this one. Oh. That's so good. Okay. Let's watch a video. Okay, so the first one. Yeah. Love that shit. Okay, so the first video we've got on our list here is called Can We Stop Irresponsibly Platforming White Nationalists, from the channel Godless Cranium. So already I'm intrigued by the title. That makes me happy. So let's see what this... I don't know this channel, so I can't vouch for Godless Cranium. But let's see what this person has to say. Just gotta get the chat up.
Eventually.
Oh, I do know this guy. This is the guy who did the video where he this is the guy who used to be part of the alt-right, and then he sort of repented, and he made a whole video about how he became radicalized and de-radicalized. And now he's, I guess, making YouTube videos. I didn't know that. It's just a clip of that guy. Okay.
I was looking through all these videos. This little video, this YouTuber popped up in my sidebar, and it had an interesting clickbaity title, and it was something about the truth about therapy, or it was something to do with depression and self-help and bettering yourself, and looked interesting to me. I clicked on it, and it was this Canadian YouTuber, and I think you guys know where I'm going with this. If you're familiar with these circles.
Always be nervous about a Canadian YouTuber. They're always up to no good.
But it was Stefan Molyneux.
Uh-oh. Former YouTuber.
So why did I bother showing you that clip? Well, it's from a video by Faraday Speaks. In it, he outlines his descent into the alt-right pipeline. He basically says that he began that descent by clicking on a Stefan Molyneux video, And over a fairly lengthy amount of time, he was slowly radicalized by Molyneux, as well as the increasingly far-right videos and commentators that YouTube kept recommending to him. There have been news stories written about how YouTube's algorithms potentially increase the chances of being radicalized, and any YouTuber who has been doing this for any length of time will tell you that collaborating with other creators is a great way of growing your audience, and having your content potentially show up in the sidebar or recommended tab whenever someone views that video. And sometimes, even if they're viewing another video, but the algorithm makes a connection due to that collaboration, that the viewer might like the content of that person. So, if I do a collaboration with Atheist Creator 121, their content will more likely be featured in my sidebar when someone watches my video.
Oh my god, this happened to me before, in like a not pleasant way. I had a situation in which a YouTuber, where the YouTube algorithm for about a month in, I think, 2015 became convinced, no, not 2015, 2016. We became convinced that I would really... No, 2017. Anyways, the algorithm became very convinced that myself and Black Pigeon Speaks were apparently crossover content. And so they started recommending step back videos on Black Pigeon Speaks videos like en masse. And so I started getting I had maybe a month or two where I was getting deluged with Nazis, basically. That was a real fun month for my comment section.
Especially the one we collaborated on, and vice versa. And this matters because of the topic. I'd like to talk about irresponsibly platforming people. I can already hear people furiously typing in the comment section. But, GC, we should be open to talk about anything. You're against free speech. You monster.
Am I imagining it, or Canadians weirdly prominent in alt-right social media? You're not imagining it. It is a thing. I don't exactly know why it's a thing. It's probably something that I could probably think through, but I'm not sure. My guess is, I've said this before in chats here, that Canada has... we have the reason why there's so many Canadian celebrities is that Canadians are very culturally similar to Americans, who are the primary consuming audience of a lot of content, but we are slightly better off per capita, so we're more likely to have the economic freedom, but also the equipment to make YouTube channels. And so there's a higher proportion of Canadians. And then also, I imagine that a lot of far-right Canadians go into making media because they don't really have a political platform in our political discourse. Like, the Progressive Conservative Party actively rejects white supremacists and stuff like that. They even our conservatives even are just now toying with the idea of social conservative. Being called social conservative is actually fairly is actually kind of a bad thing in Canadian politics, but now groups Rebel Media and stuff like that are starting to platform it, so it's where it has.
But let's get those shallow criticisms out of the way first. When I say irresponsibly platform, the key word is irresponsible. We'll get into exactly what I mean a bit later in the video, but what I don't mean is that we shouldn't talk to people we disagree with. I'm also going to use a fairly recent rationality rules debate he had with Stéphane Molyneux to illustrate my point. But, dear God, why did it have to be over 2 hours long? Now,
I don't understand why, there's this, line between, we shouldn't platform white supremacists and white nationalists. And then everyone's like, oh, you just want to only talk to people that you agree with. And it's isn't there some sort of line, it's one thing to never talk to anybody you disagree with. Trust me, as a anarchist and a communist, I would say that there's very few people that I meet in day-to-day life, or very few friends that I have that are people I 100% agree with on all things. It's just that Like, why do we have to have the conversation about, like, anything that has to do about human rights? Like, I understand, like, hey, I should probably have to have conversations with people who think capitalism and the state are good because there's just a lot of people who believe that. It's another thing for me to be like, oh no, but then you also have to talk to people who, like, deny the human rights of people of color. Like, I feel like there's a disconnect.
This isn't because I just want to take a swing at RR, but because it's the most recent example I know and care about. Although, he does seem to have a way of running into right-wingers and fascist sympathizers.
The worst case scenario for the alt-right success in this endeavor is less intolerable to me and my family than the SJW success. And so from a tactical evaluation, I have to choose this angle. I have to try and explain to the alt-right that they can get what they want and they should take this gambit.
Well,
even if it means...
Rationality Rules is a piece of shit. Last year, he made a video about how we need to be skeptical about trans athletes. I don't even know who Rationality Rules is. Just by the name of the channel, it makes me skeptical, so I understand.
The end of liberal democracy.
But hey, maybe that's just a bit of bad luck. Or he wants to test his mettle in the crucible of ideas. Whatever the case, the debate I'm going to use certainly is not the most egregious example of irresponsible platforming I could come up with. Some people have made a career of having far-right mouthpieces on and irresponsibly platforming them. Although, I do have some skin in the game, since I openly criticized this particular debate on Twitter by pointing out that maybe platforming an alt-right white nationalist misogynist and legitimizing them by pretending they have anything worth listening to in the field of ethics might not be such a hot idea. I mean, he is a race realist and openly said that maybe Poland is super peaceful because it's mostly white. And he did routinely talk about how many eggs women have, and seems super obsessed with how many babies they should have.
Eggs. Fucking Stefan Molyneux and his eggs. I'm so glad he's off the air now.
Too. But this isn't really about Molyneux. I think most people would admit that he's not the sort of person they'd want to promote. However, Cosmic Skeptic, that great bastion of rationality, came to RR's defense by...
I don't know any of these people. I don't know who Cosmic Skeptic is either.
But I admit, I sort of expected that.
They all sound
I
awful.
know they're friends in real life. What I didn't expect was Matt Dillahunty writing in and saying my concern was stupid, even though it was nice to see both Matt and CS get a little pushback by their own fans, because honestly, what I said was completely reasonable. And if either didn't understand my point because of the layer upon layer of sarcasm I coded it in, then they could have asked for clarification. However, it does seem that Matt understands what irresponsibly platforming someone means, since he told someone, while I was
I didn't even know these. I didn't know this
that
many
he
people
wasn't into
existed.
promoting
They just
someone
there's
who
more of
pushes
them.
dangerous conspiracy theories.
Like, I don't even know who Matt Dillahunty is. I don't know who any of these people are. Are the people still doing this shit? Like, I thought that they're like, I only know the top tier, the cream at the top of like the shitty racists, grifters on YouTube. But apparently it goes way deeper. There's random Matt Dillahunties and rational. What the guy was name? I don't remember his name anymore. Somebody just said his name. Said Rational React. I don't know. Rationality Rules. And then there was like that Atheism is Unstoppable, like racist kangaroo YouTuber who got banned recently. And like, oh man. Matt Dillahunty hosts a show out of Austin called The Atheist Experience. Man, I hate all of this. This sounds fucking horrible.
Like race realism, Matt? That kind of dangerous conspiracy theory? Like Molyneux pushes Matt? I guess it's not asinine when Matt does it, though. Okay, with all that behind, let's talk about the actual subject of this video, irresponsible platforming. If you're going
I always say, like, if all these people have been, like, saying... If a lot of these people are saying, like, oh, we need to, like, platform everybody, literally everybody. Oh, I have missed a lot of this stream. We're half an hour in. This is the first video that we've watched, and we still are going to go for another 2.5 hours. I argue that if any of these platforms want to say that they truly platform free speech and they believe that anything can be discussed, that they are not living up to their truth and that they are all censorship. It's all censoring unless they have me specifically on their show. Like not a leftist YouTuber like me. until I get to be on their show and say things with no criticism like they do, like if I got to go... Dave Rubin is not a believer in free speech or ideas unless he has me specifically on the show. We can have that conversation later, but until then, I don't know. Believe it when I see it. And by when I see it, I mean when Tristan is on his show.
When you have a white nationalist on your large channel, you should first make sure you're prepared to debate their bad ideas. Otherwise, you risk making them look rational, skeptical, and all the other things that people like to believe they are. When tackling extreme ideologies like white supremacy, you had better make sure you know the subject inside and out, because Molyneux and people like him have probably taken years to perfect their argument. They likely know how the conversation is likely to unfold, and they have tried and true answers to the most obvious objections you might raise. Second, you might want to ask yourself if it's worth having them on. Are their ideas spreading at an alarming rate? Do they have a dangerous toehold in the marketplace of ideas? In this case, I'd say yes.
The free marketplace of ideas only includes right-wing people not being criticized.
Both misogyny and white supremacy are on the rise. Molyneux had a large audience before he was banned from YouTube.
Yeah.
And I can easily see why someone might think that debating those bad ideas in video format, interview, or even a debate is worthwhile and maybe even necessary. And then I'd ask myself, what should be the topic of debate? And if your answer is some obscure branch of ethics, a topic I'd argue Molyneux has no business being taken seriously on anyway, instead of the misogyny and white nationalism your guest is known for, I'd say you're irresponsibly platforming that person. If you agree to go on their channel and legitimize them as some sort of expert on ethics, instead of talking about the very real damage they've been doing for years, I'd argue that's irresponsible platforming. You are giving them access to your audience. Some of your audience may watch that video, and even though they might agree with your stance on ethics, they may decide that the white nationalist sounds pretty reasonable. Hell, it was a good talk. Maybe they'll decide to look at some of their content. And now you've potentially increased the chances of even more people being radicalized. And
don't like that one bit.
Molyneux knows this. He's a veteran. He knows how YouTube works. He knows how best to draw in new subscribers. And honestly, if I was an alt-right douche, I'd be trying to weasel myself into the atheist community and their fan base too, because not much seems tastier than an audience who likes to discount feelings and is sure of their own rational skepticism.
Oh, good stuff. This is Godless Cranium. Yeah, I wonder, it's no surprise that the skeptic atheist community, which got off on basically being pricks to religious people on the internet for decades, were really, really sympathetic to the far right. I know, as someone who used to be an atheism YouTuber, when I was the tender age of 20 or so, or 19, but then grew up and realized that there are more important things in the world than basing your identity around not believing in things. So, yeah, I think Elevator Gate exposed that, but we got more of it. And then, goddamn, now it's just now just to be an internet atheist is almost synonymous with being a white supremacist.
The kind of attitude that an alt-righter can take advantage of, because all they have to do is make it seem as if the evidence is on their side. And you can get people to buy into all kinds of abhorrent ideas, such as anti-trans propaganda, or in this case, white nationalism. But there are good ways of exposing these charlatans. I'd point towards David Pakman's interview of Richard Spencer, or even Christopher Hitchens' interview with John Metzger. The difference being that both Hitchens and Pakman came prepared. They weren't talking about an obscure branch of ethics, but about the dangerously bad ideas that those two men stood for. And you could tell that both Pakman and Hitchens found the white nationalists distasteful. While the talks were civil, they weren't friendly. I think I've made my point clearly here, but I just wanted to explore a bit of the RR Molyneux debate to finish it off. I personally found it interesting to see how Molyneux tries to manipulate the audience and RR. He starts doing this right from the beginning.
Steve and I are both atheists, and we are both very pro-science, and we are into objective reality, we're into reason, we're into empiricism, and
lol.
Self-contradictory thoughts are invalid. And I mean, I'm not speaking, I think I speak for you in far as all of that goes. So this is the funny thing, that we have an enormous...
They believe in science, but then when the science disagrees with their reactionary opinions, then they're saying, oh no, that's just the social justice warriors ruining science. It's like, oh, okay. So, because I thought skepticism was supposed to be about a lot about assessing your own position on things and sort of reassessing the way you think about things, and instead they just get like they're just like, oh no, this science agrees with my baseless assertion, so therefore I'm going with that. Hey, Spectral TTV, thank you for following.
Amount in common, I guess, like brothers who fight the most or whatever, but we do have a huge overlap, and we're both trying to deal with this issue. How the hell do you get morality without the commandments that come from a deity?
As you saw, he opens up by trying to create a link of commonality between himself and RR, and by extension RR's audience.
Is this the Rationality Rules guy that said a bunch of transphobic things, then got invited to Matt Dillahunty's show to do a non-apology? It sounds like it. That's what people are saying. I have never heard of this person before I started watching this specific YouTube video.
Even this part should have evoked a massive pushback from RR, in my opinion. Imagine a race realist sitting across from you. It's saying that you're a lot alike because you're both men of science, reason, empiricism, and rationality. Meanwhile, he's known for pushing race realism and other conspiracy theories. But Molyneux's goal here is to tell RR's audience that even though he and RR might disagree on this whole ethics thing, they have enough in common that they might want to check out his content too. He's essentially manipulating RR into smiling and agreeing with him about how similar they are, and he's hoping that this will be enough to convince some of RR's audience to look at his work. Maybe over time, he can get them hooked. And maybe even get a few Patreons.
What is this like? What's this like?
RR thinks this is about ethics, but it's
what
really
this,
not.
What's this like?
That's just
clip videos that he's doing. This stock footage.
Again, we talked earlier about the
How many times could I use a what's it called in stock footage? A clown juggling a bunch of alarm clocks
and pillars of smoke rolling across America at the moment. That's people who don't believe that they can reason with each other, and so they're taken to the streets, and there's violence. If we lose reason, if we lose the conversation, we gain nothing but endless war and conflict. And of course, we saw this in Europe with 300 years of civil war based upon religious groups trying to wrestle control of various state governments in order to impose their views on everyone else and avoid having other people's views imposed upon them, to the point where Europe said the only way we can survive is to separate church and state.
Here he's putting in some of his talking points. He's creating this oversimplified version of events happening in the US, and somehow he's boiled it all down to just people not being able to reason. It has nothing to do with...
Who is that guy on the left? I don't recognize him. He's called the Eggler. It's a burglar who steals eggs and gives them to poor children. That's it.
Hundreds of years of slavery, Jim Crow, systemic racism, police brutality, economic inequality, and the rise of fascism in America, among other things. It's just people not reasoning. And Molyneux likes to set himself up as some sort of defender of reason, while everyone else is just violent and unreasonable. Molyneux is a hero who stands, shield of rational skepticism and philosophy held high before him, ready to repel the baying horde.
And, for like, I don't know, like 15 years, I've been talking about the dangers of increased leftist violence and racial conflict and all of this. And, sadly, if it turns out that you're right, that at least tells people that your theory has some potential merit. So that's, I think, where truth, logical consistency maps onto reality as best as we can tell. That's about as high a bar as we can set.
That part comes in around the 45-minute mark of the debate. Once again, he's starting to introduce some of his right-wing talking points. Again, RR just sits there staring blankly ahead. He doesn't bring up how Molyneux pushes race realism, white nationalism, and ultimately adds to the bonfire of racial conflict. He doesn't push back against the assertion that the left is unusually violent when right-wing terrorism is on the rise worldwide. He just allows him to keep talking, even though what he's saying is
we don't have that much of a conversation about this aspect, but yeah, the fact that nobody talks about like that we've still been able to completely frame the terrorism conversation, like this goes into like the scaremongering about Antifa, but at the same time, hey, thank you, Canola Oil, for subscribing. Much appreciated. Thank you for keeping the show rolling. That's really nice of you. How many months is that? Or is this your first time? Either way, I'm happy to have you. Yeah, we the framing of terrorism always seems to be done at the but like you have like terrorism like of Antifa and like the left and everything like that. When I think about like 3 months though, that's pretty cool. Thank you very much. That's a whole quarter. Thank you, canola oil. You are a good person. So, but like the thing is, if you look at it like Stefan Molyneux would, obviously, objectively with science and numbers and brain force plus, you would know that the data shows over and over and over and over again that first of all, that in America, like when the scaremongering, before it was about Antifa, it was about Muslim extremist terrorists. While they have not been the majority threat in the United States since about 2005, I want to say. And that by and large, like for most of American history, as long as they've been tracking terrorism, right-wing white supremacist terrorism has by far been the biggest threat to national security, until a point where I think it was like 2018 that the Trump administration decided to stop tracking it. And like for a while, people believed it, like people like were really into like this, like in the 90s after the Oklahoma City bombing. Like the popular idea was that terrorists were weird libertarians who lived in the woods. But yeah.
Nonsense. And this in turn, whether RR intends it or not, tells his audience that he at the very least tacitly agrees with what Molyneux is saying.
Basically, I think there's about 16, 17 flaws with UPB, and particularly there's 4 of them which are game ending, as it were.
Wow, so if the flaws in UPB are years, it can almost vote. That's great. A couple more and it can drink in the States. Anyway, go on.
So I just kept this part in to illustrate how comfortable Molyneux is. He's cracking jokes because he knows that RR isn't going to do much, if any, pushing back against his bad ideas. He'll push back against his ethics arguments, sure, but
the Obama administration is what stopped tracking white supremacist terrorism.
No, it's just like you had this. I actually got really pissed off when I watched that video of yours because I thought you were portraying me as a Nazi because you had that scene from Inglourious Bastards. Because you were indicating that my philosophy, if taken to its logical conclusion, would have you giving up Jews to Nazis. And I've been real clear about that once you have a gun pointed to your head, you're no longer in a moral situation.
And here Molyneux is fishing. He wants to know if RR thinks he's a Nazi. This is a perfect opportunity to bring up Molyneux's well-known white nationalist ideas. But again, RR just laughs and denies he meant anything offensive by the clip he used. It's also really weird that Molyneux would immediately jump to the conclusion that using a movie clip that features Nazis meant that he was being portrayed as a Nazi. However, I do want to point out one bright point in this debate. At one point, RR brings up Molyneux's book, which is specifically about the topic they're debating, and Molyneux immediately gets angry and accuses RR of ambushing him. Seriously, he thinks he's being ambushed by quotes from his own book on the subject they've decided to debate. I doubt RR will watch this, and if he does, I doubt he'll make it this far, but I honestly enjoyed watching this part.
Okay, so if I wanted to prove to you that the Earth is a sphere, and my first premise was the Earth is a sphere, and then you said to me, you're begging the question, and I said, no, because I give evidences elsewhere, my argument is still begging the question. Those arguments over there, which can be laid out in premises, may not be begging the question, but it's still begging the question. So I guess
I can't go with you there. I don't have the text in front of me, but I go through a lot of effort to establish the validity of UPB. So saying I just state it and that's begging the question, come on. I mean, let's be fair about that.
No, so I don't. If I'm honest with you, I just don't think you understand begging the question, and I apologize if that comes across in any demeaning way. It is not.
Well, no, I don't have the text in front of me, so I mean, I don't know what context you're quoting in.
It doesn't. A syllogism doesn't need context if it's guilty of certain logical fallacies.
No, because if I say UPB is valid, and then I say here's all the arguments why, and you say, well, you're saying UPB is valid, and that's back. Let's not do this part. This part is, I think, beneath both of us. Let's see if we can get on.
Your proof
No, because
that
you got to tell me, if you want to start quoting my book, then you got to give me the quote ahead of time so that I can see the context of what it is. You're just pulling one sentence out and saying that's begging the question. That's boring
Hey,
for
that's
the audience.
cool.
And, email me and I'll sort of.
Sir Zhao Zhao made a Swedish Wikipedia post, or a Swedish Wikipedia page for the Public Universal Friend, which you learn about from the video. Awesome. I have plans to make a Public Universal Friend video someday. I just don't know when.
Provide something else, but I can't sort of pull up the text and see what else is around there and all that kind of stuff. So let's. I don't have the context for that.
And it's even more funny when you realize that Molyneux has certainly done his research on RR. He goes through listing titles of RR's videos.
I mean, you have videos like 9 Proofs of Evolution, why evolution is true. In other words, why evolution is accurate to explain biological history, the world, and so on, why evolution is true, and certainly more true than something like creationism, which I certainly agree with you on. So you got 9 Proofs of Evolution, why evolution is true. You've got dozens of videos with the words debunked. You've got Big Bang debunked. 3 justifications for scriptural slavery debunked. Everyone is religious debunked, and so on. And there's rebuttals and so on, right? So
brings up RR's terrible videos on trans athletes.
That you did a video on transgender athletes and you made some mistakes and you publicly put out a video apologizing and correcting your errors, which I think is a noble and good thing to do.
And then drops a bomb. He starts talking about genetics and IQ, which is the starting point to getting someone to accept race realism and eventually white nationalism. He's basically ceding the ground, and RR doesn't do much about it.
The fact statement is that we have characteristics that we do not earn. That are like, so for instance, IQ is largely genetic. And so the matter of intelligence is not something that we can take personal pride in how smart we are. I mean, obviously, there's some things we can do to help and improve it. There's 10 to 20% that's in play.
But near the end of the debate, Molyneux starts unleashing some of his libertarian nonsense, and I think this is the moment when RR really comes to the realization that...
Yeah, I feel like this comes off as like, what's this, rational something? See you later, Radical Reviewer. Have a good one. Like, this guy, like, yeah, it seems like this guy is just lazy and he just didn't do any prep work for a debate with a white supremacist, which is like, I hate debate bro culture in general, but like, if you're gonna do a debate, like, do homework. Okay.
That he's being used.
You know, that's pretty wild to me.
This with libertarianism in order to somehow poison the well, because most of the audience is a libertarian. You almost want them to know that I'm not a libertarian. I know that you are claiming, no, I'm just using an example like this. You know, a lot of your audience are right-wing leaning, so you want to bring up the fact that I defend trans people. Like, this all feels like poisoning the well. But that's not an argument.
You can have your feelings, but maybe we could just talk about the facts.
Absolutely, just talk about the facts. I don't know how many times I can say it to you with these different examples. It's hypothetical in parallel.
One thing, though, I don't know if you're aware of this, but a lot of your audience is right-wing as well, RR. Probably due to your trans athlete video, platforming of Molyneux and Sargon, and your praise of other right-wing commentators. At the very end, Molyneux goes off about Antifa and violence and yada yada yada. But I think I've made my point here. In closing, I'd like to say that talking to people like Molyneux isn't necessarily unethical, but I'd argue having him on for this farce certainly was. There's a million people more qualified to talk about ethics than Molyneux. Hell, there's even active moral philosophers. A little while later...
Well, I don't like debates because they're so often framed as competition. I just don't care about competition. It's not even like there's debate in like the sense of like academic debate, like there's like Oxford style debates and stuff. But, like, debates in, like, the sense of, like, what we have here is, like, it's just, like, it's all framed in, like, stupid WWE bullshit that I don't, first of all, it's, like, toxic masculinity, like, at its finest, but also it's just dumb. Like, it just doesn't accomplish anything. They talk at each other, typically, like, what's it called, ends up with people using their platform to give, like, fascists a voice, and then it's just over, and all that's happened is maybe a few marginal people have been pushed to the far right. Like, I don't understand.
RR had a discussion about ethics with Shannon Q, who isn't a white nationalist scumbag trying to manipulate his audience into going to her channel. I think irresponsibly platforming people like Molyneux is dangerous, and content creators, myself included, should think a little more deeply about how we use our platforms. Thanks for watching. If you found value here, please like and subscribe. If you really enjoyed this video, perhaps you'll consider supporting my work on Patreon. Take care and cheers.
Okay, well, like, it's decent video. I don't feel like it feels like it was just a response video to that debate and talking about how, like, I don't know, like, I feel like I didn't walk away with a strong, like, I was expecting a video essay, and this ended up being more of a response, like what I'm doing. When there's like so many interesting things he could have talked about that he sort of missed out on. Well, let's move on to the next thingy, shall we?
So we're now officially.
So this is E.C. Henry. This is a Star Trek video. I don't think we're gonna do a Star Trek video. We did that last time, and everyone was like, and also Picard, why use Discovery ships? This seems like it's going to be, like, lore nitpicking, so let's not. So this is Captain Cook lands in New Zealand, 1769 journal, primary source, from Voices of the Past. Oh boy. Let's see where this goes.
Monday, 9th of October. Gentle breezes and clear weather. PM. Stood into the bay and anchored on the northeast side before the entrance of a small river. In 10 fathoms, a fine sandy bottom. The northeast point of the bay bore east by south, half south, and the southwest point south, distance from the shore half a league. After this, I went ashore with a party of men in the boat and yawl, accompanied by Mr. Banks and Dr. Solander. We landed abreast of the ship and on the east side of the river just mentioned, but seeing some of the natives on the other side of the river of whom I was desirous of speaking with, and finding that we could not ford the river, I ordered the yawl in to carry us over, and the boat to lay off at the entrance. In the meantime, the Indians made off. However, we went as far as their
Fucking calling Maori people Indians. We're off to a good start.
huts, which lay about 200 or 300 yards from the waterside, leaving 4 boys to take care of the yawl, which we had no sooner left than 4 men came out of the woods on the other side of the river, and would certainly have cut her off had not the people in the boat discovered them and called to her to drop down the stream, which they did, being closely pursued by the Indians.
They call native folks Indians. They must have.
The coxswain of the boat, who had the charge of the boats, seeing this, fired 2 muskets over their heads. The first made them stop and look round, but the second they took no notice of, upon which a third was fired, and killed one of them upon the spot, just as he was going to dart his spear at the boat. At this, the other 3 stood motionless for a minute or 2, seemingly quite surprised, wondering, no doubt, what it was that had thus killed their comrade. But as soon as they recovered themselves, they made off, dragging the dead body a little way, and then left it. Upon our hearing the report of the muskets, we immediately repaired to the boats, and after viewing the dead body, we returned on board. In the morning, seeing a number of the natives at the same place where we saw them last night, I went on shore with the boats manned and armed, and landed on the opposite side of the river. Mr. Banks, Dr. Solander, and myself only landed at first, who went to the side of the river, the natives being got together on the opposite side. We called to them in the George's Island language, but they answered us by flourishing their weapons over their heads and dancing.
How could they respond to us shooting at them, and then we try to say hi? Like, we killed one of your people, and then we said hi, and then you responded by attacking us? Wow. What a logical way to be taken aback.
As we supposed, the war dance. Upon this we retired until the Marines were landed, which I ordered to be drawn up about 200 yards behind us. We went again to the riverside.
Now, we've seen that war dance. That's probably like the Maori, what's it called? That Maori dance is fucking cool as shit. I love every time it happens, it's fucking praxis.
Having Tupia, Mr. Green, and Dr. Monkhouse along with us. Tupia spoke to them in his own language, and it was an agreeable surprise to us to find that they perfectly understood him. After some little conversation had passed, one of them swam over to us, and, after him, 20 or 30 more. These last brought their arms, which the first man did not. We made them, every one, presents, but this did not satisfy them. They wanted everything that we had about.
Just like the most, like, I'm very sorry that I killed one of your people. Have a lobster.
us, particularly our arms, and made several attempts to snatch them out of our hands. Tupia told us several times, as soon as they came over, to take care of ourselves, for they were not our friends, and this we very soon found, for one of them snatched Mr. Green's hanger from him and would not give it up. This encouraged the rest to be more insolent, and seeing others coming over to join them, I ordered the man who had taken the hanger to be fired at, which was accordingly done, and wounded in such a manner that he died soon after.
Okay, so now they've met for like 10 seconds. They've killed 2 of them now. And they're still like, oh, well, like, how could they possibly be so aggressive towards us? Oh, Jesus.
Upon the first fire, which was only 2 muskets, the others retired to a rock which lay nearly in the middle of the river, but on seeing the man fall, they returned, probably to carry him off for his arms, the last of which they accomplished, and this we could not prevent unless we had run our bayonets into them, for upon their returning to the rock we had discharged off our pieces, which are loaded with small shot, and wounded 3 more, but these got over the river and were carried off by the others, who now thought proper to retire. Finding nothing was to be done with the people on this side, and the water in the river being salt, I embarked with an intent to row round the head of the bay in search of some fresh water, and if possible to surprise some of the natives and to take them on board, and by good treatment and presents endeavour to gain their friendship with this view.
We're just going to keep kidnapping and shooting you until you become our friend.
Tuesday the 10th, p.m. I rowed round the head of the bay, but could find no place to land on account of the great surf which beat everywhere upon the shore. Seeing 2 boats or canoes coming in from the sea, I rowed to one of them in order to seize upon the people, and came so near before they took notice of us that Tupia called to them to come alongside and we would not hurt them. But instead of doing this, they endeavoured to get away, upon which I ordered a musket to be fired over their heads, thinking this would either make them surrender or jump overboard. But here I was mistaken, for they immediately took to their arms, or whatever they had in the boat, and began to attack us. This obliged us to fire upon them, and, unfortunately, either 2 or 3 were killed, and 1 wounded, and 3 jumped overboard. These last,
it's because they were kidnapping. Oh my god.
we took up and brought on board, where they were clothed and treated with all imaginable kindness. And to
This is like some like shitty stepdad just being like, I'm sorry that I kidnapped you and killed some people. Have some treats. You want some marshmallow squares? I shot your uncle. Here's a new toy.
surprise of everybody, at once became as cheerful and as merry as if they had been with their own friends. They were all 3 young, the eldest not above 20 years of age, and the youngest about 10 or 12. I'm aware that most humane men who have not experienced things of this nature will censure my conduct in firing upon the people in their boat, nor do I myself think that the reason I had for seizing upon her will at all justify me, and had I thought that they would have made the least resistance, I would not have come near them. But, as they did, I was not to stand still and suffer either myself or those that were there with me to be knocked on the head.
Well, Captain Cook, go rot in hell. Rot in hell. Okay. So we learned more about how Captain Cook is a fucking monster. Congratulations. Captain Cock, more like. There you go. There's the answer. That's the solution. Okay, so this is a guy. This is Simon Roper. I've never heard of this guy. This video is called "How Much Did English Speakers Swear in the Past?" Oh boy. Let's hope this is more interesting. I don't know if let's see where this goes.
The question in the title of this video is obviously very broad, so I think it's best we keep it narrow. I'm not going to focus on racial terminology or anything like that. I'm going to mainly focus on 3 words that we know to be very old in the English language and in the Germanic language branch. So those words are cunt, shit and fuck. Now it's worth pointing out right to start off with that the word cunt is perceived very differently by American English speakers than it is by British English speakers and Australian English speakers. So in American English and US English,
Fun.
I gather it's a lot harsher, it's a lot more directed at women, so it's a gendered slur, and it's received a lot worse there than it is here, I think. In the UK it's got no connotation of gender whatsoever apart from the meaning, the original meaning of genitalia. It really isn't a gendered slur, it's just it's more severe than the word fuck, but it's used pretty much indiscriminately against anyone of any sex or gender. It's probably, in my experience, more likely to be used against a man than a woman marginally.
Oh yeah, this guy's
taking
taking a while to get to the point of the thing he's trying to say. So let's watch something else. We have like 70 videos to get through, so like we got to be a bit more choosy, I think. That's my trick. What if Trotsky came to power instead of Stalin? By the Alternate History Hub, featuring Cypher. Okie dokie. Let's see what this is like.
Lenin is dead. His death is mourned across the newly formed USSR. But it isn't unexpected. Lenin for the past couple years had suffered through a series of strokes. He knew his time was coming to an end, as did many others. It had been clear that soon somebody was going to take his place. We all know who won, and because we know the type of atrocities that occurred under Stalin, it's been wondered over the past few decades what would have happened had Trotsky taken power instead.
So I guess like the thing is this is gonna get into is that like Trotsky was much more of like Trotsky is the fucking butcher of Ukrainian anarchists, and was very much the guy who was like, hey, like Soviet Union needs to use the army to basically conquer the fucking planet. So that's like this is gonna get hot. What's it called? Trotsky-run Soviet Union has no Cold War, that's for sure.
So longtime fans might be thinking, didn't he do a video about this already? And yeah, I did. But I have a stance on a lot of older videos. They have aged terribly. Oops! But now I'm a slightly wiser Cody. I have help from Cypher, the cynical historian, who's done some work on Soviet history himself. So before going into such a scenario, we can't simply begin this deviation in some alternate 1924 where, after Lenin dies, Trotsky just takes over instead of Stalin. Some things beforehand need to change. Old Mustache Boy simply didn't just take over out of nowhere and steal what was supposedly rightfully Trotsky's. Stalin was a Bolshevik from the very beginning. He rose up the ranks from the street to being personally appointed by Lenin into the general secretary position. Trotsky was a Menshevik until 1917 when he realized they weren't going to win out. So one major change needs to occur for Trotsky to even come close to taking control instead of Stalin. Lenin himself needs to vocally support Trotsky consistently and often. Which, that's quite the thing to imagine. Trotsky was just one of a couple who were in a position to take over once Lenin kicked the bucket, and out of them, Stalin was the only one with real political power, while Trotsky
Hasn't Cody worked with Tristan? Yeah, we made a video on net neutrality together.
While Trotsky was successful as a military...
I did a video with Cody, like, back in 2017, I want to say, maybe 2018, where we did a video on his channel. We did a video about what if the internet didn't exist. And then on my channel, we did a video about net neutrality. So that resulted in, that was a fun day. That was the day that I got like 2,000 subscribers in a single day, which I've never had happen ever since. And yeah, we also did So That Happened off and on every once in a while.
Leader.
What happened is So That Happened. I don't know, like the show, like would get on the first time that we ran the show, we were on a good clip for a while, but then Cody was writing his book, and basically taking time to write the book ate up most of the time that he was going to spend doing the show. So we stopped doing the show as he was working on his book. But then the book came out, and he didn't pick up the show again until like about a year later. And a year later, we did a couple episodes, and basically it would happen, like, we would only do a show if everybody was together, and every time, like we had a couple missed, and then just eventually, like, we'd only do the show really if, like, it started regularly, then it started to get less often, and then we'd basically only do a show whenever Cody felt like he wanted to do one, and then eventually we just never heard from him.
In intellectual during the revolution that didn't translate into automatic political success in the head Soviet. And to be blunt, he wasn't really well liked. He was extremely opinionated, even by leftist revolutionary standards, and his general ideology didn't mesh well with the politics that were forming in Moscow. And that's the main change that happens in this alternate timeline. Somehow Stalin just doesn't play his cards right, and Lenin is much more vocal that Stalin should not be in charge.
Monsieur Zed, yeah, that guy is fascist, if I remember correctly.
In Stalin was the letter called Lenin's Testament, which called on Stalin to be removed from power. The authenticity of this letter is disputed, but even if it was faked, this piece of paper with Lenin's name on it held so much political influence, it was still a threat to Stalin's position. So if somehow Lenin, without a doubt before his stroke, politically ruined Stalin, that would have led to new candidates being available to take his place. Even with that unlikely scenario occurring, Trotsky needs to gain enough allies with the Central Soviet to be even considered to lead the party, which during 1922 and 24, Trotsky was certainly beaten back during sessions of the Soviet Congress by the majority. How effective this alternate Lenin approval of Trotsky would be,
I actually don't know a whole lot about this party either,
honest,
so it's interesting to watch.
This is flimsy, but it's the best chance Trotsky would have.
Trotsky actually had a lot of power for a while, but specifically in the military. He was the leader of the Red Army and Navy until 1925. So he was in charge of fighting the Russian Civil War and interventionist forces, which included the United States and Britain, putting down several uprisings such as Kronstadt, and all the various invasions of the time, which were Ukraine, Kazakhstan, the Baltic states, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Armenia, Poland, and Finland. He was a pretty busy guy, but still found time to write profusely, including trying to justify the Red Terror, which was when the Bolshevik secret police called
Sounds a little bit like, what's it called? Like this era's Alexander Hamilton, which I think is kind of funny. Just this, like, opinionated asshole that nobody likes.
Cheka suppressed dissent through state terrorism and mass executions, including sending people to work camps, though they weren't called gulags yet. No wonder why he wasn't well liked, even by the party establishment. Hence, when he formed his own faction called the Left Opposition in 1923, he further alienated himself until finally being voted out of the Central Committee in 1927 and expelled from the Soviet Union a year later. When you're considered too radical by Bolsheviks, you know it'd be difficult for Trotsky to take power.
If by some miracle Trotsky becomes the successor to Lenin, his first years in office would be shaky politically. Like I said, Stalin was always a Bolshevik and knew how to gain allies. Trotsky wouldn't be as successful on this front. Now he could.
We do not need a Trotsky musical, or we really, really need a Trotsky musical. You ever think about that one?
He was not one to shy away from using secret police and violence to sway opposition, just like Stalin did. And he would most likely use such methods to slowly rework the system from the inside, which would translate into transforming what the party could become. From his exile, Trotsky's main criticism of Stalin's government was its brutish egotism. Party officials making decisions on matters they really had no experience in. A system that would define the culture of the USSR even after Stalin's death. Trotsky was a strange contradiction of ideological fanaticism, but also pragmatism. Believing the Communist Party shouldn't need to have an opinion on every matter for the nation to be a socialist state. It could, in some areas, delegate matters to experts. He did this during the Civil War, bringing in old Tsarist officers to train Red Army regiments. The old guard, in his mind, had some use in its knowledge, especially when it came to economics within the Soviet Union. He felt like those with more experience in those fields would be useful instead of party officials. So this alternate Soviet Union would ironically hire bourgeoisie experts to figure out how to balance the budget, trade, and most importantly, agriculture. Trotsky would aim for a party separated from economic affairs, and much like Lenin would allow some forms of private industry in local areas to help facilitate economic growth on the small scale. While this does seem weirdly contradictory for a more ideological state, to Trotsky the party still would hold the final decision in such areas. As long as the worker class and unions remain fully in charge, the Soviet Union to Trotsky would maintain itself as a socialist state. So if the state doesn't fully include itself in economic matters, then what does it focus its attention on? Trotsky believed that a constant renewal of revolutionary
just sounds like he makes what's it called? He just makes China, where it's like a capitalist country that calls itself communist, and wow, okay.
Fervor was good. And this was what he saw as the main responsibility of the party. The party would be the ideological generator for the nation. So, to get this out of the way, the Gulag system still exists as political prisoners are put into camps. But this wasn't really anything new or unique. The Russian Empire had been deporting and sending political enemies into Siberia for years, and it's likely even had the White Army won the Civil War, the Gulag still would be used. Trotsky was an ideological purist, even constantly shifting his own purity over the years. And I could imagine him arresting and deporting many more people for being enemies of the revolution than Stalin did. This alternate Trotskyist USSR is an ideologically fanatical state, just like the man himself. So I feel this needed to be focused on at some point. But what of the Holodomor? The Holodomor, for context, was the mass starvation that took place in Ukraine between 1932 and 1933. And one of the main questions when imagining Stalin never coming to power is, would this still happen?
Yeah, now Nestor Makhno, now there's a guy who needs a musical. Fuck yeah. To be a badass musical.
Yes.
Like, you'd be like an anarchist version of, like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of, like, make him, like, funny in, like, a Jack Sparrow-y kind of way. And, you could do it. You could do it. I would like it.
Just not as extreme. Within the peasants, there was an upper class of landowners that hired labor to work their land, known as kulaks. As the kulaks were certainly not happy about the whole collectivizing thing, this discontent led to the Soviets labeling them as enemies of the revolution, and encouraging the lower class of peasants to rise up against them. The Soviets would have cracked down on the kulaks no matter what. Trotsky was actually a main proponent in punishing the kulaks, and from his exile was shocked that Stalin went through with the plan, though he disagreed on the methods, which is really a common theme with Trotsky. The intentions are good, but I never would have done it that way. So this alternate USSR still sees the kulaks punished. What really caused the Holodomor wasn't simply these factors. It was Stalin's export of Ukrainian grain to other parts of Europe, and his crackdown to make sure no news of the famine came out. I don't imagine Trotsky would do the same approach. He was against any trade with capitalist nations, so he wouldn't need to sell off any grain. The main change is that there are resources and food that could...
Yeah, that's the thing, is, like, this is what the part that, like, Holodomor denialists or whatever really get into, or don't really talk about, which is that, like, Stalin wanted to, like, they had enough food to not have people starve, or at least have way fewer people go hungry. But they were like, but no, we have to maintain international trade. We need to sell this grain that our people need. Despite the fact that he was like a big autarky guy, we need to, like, you know, trade our grain to other countries while Ukrainians starve. It's like, oh, Jesus. That's nice. Like, because this is like the main sticking point that, this is like the main thing that genocide deniers of the Holodomor typically don't get into. The Holodomor was basically the Soviet Bengal famine. Like, you're not wrong, actually. It's pretty... The only thing is that it's like a mix of the Bengal famine and the potato famine. Like, the potato famine was, again, like, there was an actual famine. Like, there was, like, an actual, like, bad harvest and stuff like that. It's just that what little food there was, they didn't use to feed people. They took away because they rationalized themselves, well, the starvation will make the people turn against the kulaks, and it will lead to, things going politically the way that Stalin wants. And unfortunately, it resulted in people eating their children instead.
Would be shared, and under Trotsky, they would remain within Ukraine. This video was sponsored by Audible. You know what it is, I know it. There have been many dissections and discussions on Trotsky. Check it out, click on the link in the description, www.audible.com/althistory, or text althistory to 500-500. Each month, Audible members will now receive one free audiobook and access to a monthly selection of Audible originals. So if you're interested in learning up more on Soviet history, or just listening to audiobooks in any other topic, use the link in the description to get started. Alright, back to the video. The greatest difference between Trotsky and Stalin was their international policy. Stalin wanted socialism in one state, believing the only way to protect the party was to secure its authority at home. Trotsky believed the only way to protect the party was to expand. A socialist country alone, even a state as big as the USSR, would always remain isolated and without many trading opportunities. And so it had to expand its ideological influence. Now I say that with about 50 asterisks. Stalin focused more on securing socialism in the USSR, but it wasn't like he just ignored other communist movements around the world. He expanded Soviet influence outward, especially after World War II. So how would Trotsky be different? Trotsky, for being the intellect that he was, didn't make the smartest decisions when it came to military campaigns outside of the USSR, such as a failed invasion of Poland during the Civil War. Trotsky's foreign policy is simply less restrained and more aggressive to the outside world, even to the USSR's own detriment. I don't expect a Trotsky with the entire power of the USSR at his disposal.
I'm guessing they're going to get to this, but my guess is this also means you don't end up with a Molotov-Ribbentrop Act type thing, where Stalin, the person who everyone assumes, who everyone swears to me is a socialist and a communist, and historic.ly might try to say is like the best leader of all time, makes an alliance with literal fascists, literal Nazis, like actual Nazi Germany, to in order to divide Poland and to allow cover so that he can go to war with Finland. So something makes me think that World War II would probably start a lot earlier.
Disposal to have any less restraint. Unlike Stalin, who anticipated something was coming and built up the military for such a threat, Trotsky would build up the military and immediately attempt to go on the warpath. Throughout the 1920s, large amounts of Soviet equipment and funds would be funneled into neighboring states. First Poland, then Finland. You get the idea. If any of these revolutions failed, then the next stage would occur: military incursion. I don't know when these types of actions would begin, most likely just as soon as Trotsky took charge. Now, keep in mind, in 1920s to 30s Europe, revolutions did occur, but they always failed because the common civilian either didn't want to take up arms for the revolution or was openly against it. So in all likelihood, Soviet-encouraged revolution would not be successful. It would come by foreign military force.
I mean, if the Soviet Union got more involved, I guess it'd be too early for the German one. I don't know. That's a little... Like, he just kind of finished talking about how Stalin, like, wasn't helping these revolutionaries. And that's the difference between the two, is that, like, Trotsky would help them. And then was like, all these revolutions failed. Therefore, they would invade. And I was like, well, look, if they had like, arms from, like, the Soviets, they might have had more of a chance. And the other thing, too, there is also the other idea. Whoa, sorry. I also am interested to see what happens in the Spanish Civil War, because I imagine that Trotsky would have made a much more of an active role in that.
Now, how the scenario plays out entirely depends on how the West reacts to this. Would they simply attempt to avoid war like with Nazi Germany, or instead would they immediately react and build a coalition to...
Oh, like this part, for sure, the West would react a lot harsher and a lot quicker. Like, the reason why a lot of... Like, the story that you hear in, like, high school is that the British and, like, the West didn't react to the Nazis right away because they were war-weary from the First World War, and they didn't want to, like, start shit. Even though they had, like, started shit, like, as soon as World War I had ended, trying to stop the Russian Revolution. No, this was, like... They saw Nazi Germany as, like, we don't like Nazi Germany, but they're the thing defending us from socialism. Like, they saw socialism as way more of a threat than fascism at the time. And so if the Soviets started throwing their weight around, they would have gone to war immediately. Like, they only really went to war with the fascist states because, like, as like a last resort, because they just couldn't not do it anymore.
beat back the...
And even then, when World War II started, they tried to do as little as possible. Like, when World War II started, the British, the British just kind of, like, sat around and did nothing for, like, months. Because they thought that the bigger threat was fighting the Japanese co-prosperity sphere in Asia. And so they focused way more on that. The war in Europe didn't really do anything serious outside of the fight with the Soviets until, like, the Americans got involved.
The Soviets. I actually think that it would be the second option. Appeasement of Hitler was not just because the Allied powers didn't want to get into another war, but it was also because there was some faint illusion that Hitler might just stop at the German lands. A Trotsky invasion of Poland, however, would terrify the rest of Europe, already in the midst of...
He's not going into that, which I think he should, because, like, the support of fascism in Europe was much more of an anti-socialism thing than, like, comes to the right outcome, but I think that reasons it the wrong way.
Anti-communist fears. Well, oh no, we have to rally everyone together in 1930s Europe. Yeah, Britain, France, and now Germany could band together to stop the Soviets. World War II, for as influential its effect on the world was, and as large as it was.
The only thing is that, like, this doesn't talk about, I think that some of these revolutions might actually have worked. Like, I think that it might have, like, scared the hell out of the West, but there could have been possibly a German revolution that could have made Germany socialist. There could have been an Italian one. Over under, but still possible.
Was pretty simple ideologically wise. The Nazis were so terrible they united the communists and Western powers against a common enemy. But most of all, it played out the inevitable end of Nazism. Showed that in many ways it was self-defeating, an inferno that rages for a brief moment but consumes its own fuel. So this is kind of a disturbing premise to think about. What if during the rise of fascism, the Axis didn't...
I know there was a German revolution, but I mean like a German communist takeover in like the 30s or something.
Actually attack the Allies first. Say Trotsky showed far less restraint than Stalin and preemptively invaded Nazi Germany before Hitler was able to realize Barbarossa or even invade Poland, where the already existing anti-communist sentiment is emboldened as this Trotskyist USSR repeatedly makes ideological calls to attack other nations. So to the liberal democracies of Britain and France, all they would see is the Soviets going on the offensive before Germany does. And fearing that the Soviet military might not just stop at Germany. Instead of the common cause being against fascism, it instead would be against the Soviets. The trivialities of their
red alert
politics, at least to a 1930s Europe, wouldn't be much of a concern to the Allies. The Nazis, above all else, would be anti-communist. But Trotsky was the type who would preemptively invade.
Yeah, the Cold War is basically made up of all sorts of Western countries. All sorts of Western countries hating on... what's it called? Propping up dictators who are Nazi-esque or Hitler-esque to fight communism. Like, that doesn't surprise anything else. I was not expecting Cody to call out centrists. He's gone, like, at least as about a year ago, he's gone through some political changes. Remember, he was sort of becoming more of a left-wing person as recently as, like, the end of 2019, which was around the last time I was, like, in regular contact with him. Normally we touch base at VidCon, but VidCon was canceled this year, so...
Good idea, or not, to take down Hitler before Germany ever reveals to the world the true horrors that it would unleash. The outcome, nature, and timescale of such a conflict I'm not going to go into much detail on. Perhaps it does end with the Nazis being overthrown, Britain and France being forced to retreat, half of Europe becoming quite similar to what it was after World War II, or maybe the war is far longer and dragged out. Allied forces being able to beat back the Soviets out of Germany.
It's good to see people making progress. I agree. Apparently, it has to do a lot with Emperor Tiger Star getting through to him, which I think is pretty cool.
After years of fighting, but never able to move into mainland Russia. But even with all their combined power, I still believe it'd be a drawn-out, back-and-forth war.
Oh, that's another thing. I was going to go to his wedding this year, but it got canceled because of COVID, too, so...
And the center-
I was going to be traveling. That's the thing. COVID actually made me end up having to cancel a lot of traveling. I was going to be going to Georgia for a academic conference with Mr. Beat and with Mr. Beat and with Cypher here. And then I was going to be going to a wedding in Ohio for, Cody's wedding. And Kelly and I were going to go to Europe, where I was going to go see Ollie's Dracula show and meet up with Mia. And I was going to go to VidCon. It was going to be a very good year, and COVID fucking killed it.
Center of Europe, going on until finally the atomic bomb is developed. Say the bomb is invented, and the Soviets are beaten back after Moscow and Leningrad face atomic blasts, or maybe far more cities by the time the war is done. But really, it's up in the air how much a complex, turbulent alternate war may go. A preemptive Soviet invasion of Nazi Germany may end the reign of Hitler immediately, but it will do one more thing. It will cause fascism
Hey, look,
to
Romeo's
be
here.
martyred by the Red Scare. The Soviets demonized for launching such a war by even the liberal democracies of the West. Forever, it will be debated whether Hitler would have actually invaded another nation, or to what extent the Nazis would have done. In our timeline, after failing to unite against Stalin, Trotsky and his supporters were banned from the party and sent into exile. He would bounce around various countries for a few years before finally settling in Mexico. It was here where he would write criticisms of Stalin's regime from a ranch thousands of miles away, forever talking about how he would have done things differently. However, to be honest, he at one point was always on board with the same ideas that people demonize Stalin for today. In fact, many of Trotsky's criticisms of Stalin was just that he was implementing the policies in the incorrect fashion, and his very specific way of implementing such a plan.
Yeah, Trotsky wasn't
would
this
have been
like
so
magically
much
like. There's this whole like thing. There's like myth around Trotsky that like if like the Soviet Union lost its way with Stalin, and if it had just been Trotsky, it'd have been fine. Which is like no, there was sins committed from the very beginning, and Trotsky would not have been much better.
In short, he was disliked by his party for a reason, and frankly was a contrarian. Trotsky was Stalin without the political patience, but with 10 times more zealotry. The type of zealotry that is detrimental and irrational. So why does this scenario come up so often in alternate history?
This guy has such a myth surrounding him. He fostered it himself before discovering what an ice pick felt like, but a parody account of the Soviet system really drove home this idea that Trotsky could have saved 20th century communism. As we've seen, he was just as prone to inhumanity as Stalin, if not more so. But Orson Welles just had to stick his pen in it. He wrote Animal Farm during World War II, and literally 2 days after the war ended, and the USSR no longer an ally, he released it. The book depicts the Soviet ruling class through an allegory of animals on a farm overthrowing their farmer, and the subsequent
I didn't know they made a
power
movie.
struggle
Oh,
to
dear
decide
God.
how equality is sorted out. Eventually, the pigs come to rule stating that everyone is equal, but some are more equal. There was a glimmer of hope for everyone to actually see a good form of socialism in the Trotsky.
Were there class on the USSR where you studied? I don't think there was. We don't have any Sovietologists where I went to school, so I don't think we had any like Russian studies classes or Soviet studies classes or anything like that.
Eventually gets run off. This is where the myth comes from. Trotsky formed the Fourth International after his exile, and it lives on as the standard bearer for what vanguard communism could have been. They're still active, and under the guise of Trotsky's supposed promise, often working closely with what came to be known as the New Left. They're so influential that members who oppose the counterculture of the 1960s began their own form of conservatism, now called neocons. So literally both sides of current American politics were heavily influenced by this myth. Trotsky could sit on the sidelines complaining about Stalin, but when push comes to shove, he was no better. By the way, if you want to hear some more about Soviet history myths, come check out my video on the subject, coming out today too.
Had Trotsky actually been in power, he would have been remembered just as poorly as Stalin
Man, I wish
was,
I
but
had a
he'd be
YouTube
less
channel where I just
successful.
talked about
not only dooming the
white people
USSR,
history stuff.
but
I would
accidentally
be so much more
making
popular.
fascism martyred within the West. But this is simply one alternate scenario. What do you think would have happened? This is Cody of Alternate History Hub.
Alrighty. Well, that was a fun video. I think it's cool stuff. I'm going to, though, I'm going to take a quick washroom break before we watch our next video. But yeah. I think that you covered it pretty well. Covered it more well than I think most alternate history people would, which is nice. It's a very mature response to it. Okay. So we're going to, I'm just going to play some music for you guys, and I'll be back in just a moment. Alrighty, everybody, I am back. Hello. Let's see what we got next in the old hopper. How's the chat going? Brave New World is definitely... I actually think Brave New World has more apt things to say about the nature of totalitarianism than 1984. Hot take, I know, but I think that Brave New World's got, it obviously is a product of its time. It's very out of date, but the observations it makes about society I think are a lot more, make a lot more sense than 1984's statements about dystopia or whatever. So, that's what we got next. Oh, this is the... Let's stop the music. And let's put up the next. So this one is another Star Trek video. Let's move on from that. I don't think anyone's gonna want to watch a video about not only Star Trek but Star Trek Enterprise, which I think is by and far recognized as the least good Star Trek show. All right, so we're gonna watch The Congo Crisis by History House Productions. I think this one was given to me because we watched one on Canadian history earlier, and I kind of commented on being kind of shallow and uninteresting from this channel, and then someone was like, "Oh no, his channel's actually really good. You just stumbled upon a bit of a bad one." So I guess we're giving it another chance.
Congo, what is it? I told you only to call me if there's a crisis. Yeah. The Congo covers a massive swath of Central Africa and is home to abundant
I don't know who
cultural
Francois Ferré
and
is
natural
now.
resources such as uranium, diamonds, copper, these cool masks, these awesome swords, and lots of trees. Wait a minute! The people of Congo had a pretty similar reaction to this, and after decades of Belgian domination, were finally able to secure their independence in a pretty rapid series of events. We would like independence, please. Yeah? And I would like to not have a Chef Boyardee body pillow as my only source of affection. But here I am, cold and alone. Curse you, Carol, I just want my kids back! Okay, we'll let you guys be on an advisory board to help us run the colony, but you aren't getting independent. We advise you to grant us independence. Well, color me green and call me a cucumber. It looks like they got us, boys. The only problem was that Belgium didn't want to leave.
Yeah, I'm not...
A new government needed to be picked.
This is kind of I'm trying to think what the word is. It's glib. This is some serious shit. The what's it called? The Belgian Congo wiped out 20% of the country's population during the rubber terror. This is a little. Again, it's still very surface level and very thin, and doesn't come with a lot of it. Not only is it shallow, but it has no empathy. It doesn't really talk about it. That whole exchange was extremely profound and very brutal, and a lot of horrible things happened, and it just kind of skipped it over with a bunch of kind of jokes. I don't know. And this is the kind of stuff that history YouTube seems to be full of, and this is the kind of stuff that I refuse to make. From my first video, I refused to make it, and it's probably why Step Back isn't very popular compared to a lot of my my fellow friends who came up around the same time as me.
First, and if you think American politics are messy, oh boy, let me introduce you to the 1960 Congolese elections. There was the Confederation of Tribal Associations of Katanga, the National Movement of Congo and Leopoldville, the Democratic Rally of Lac Kwango and Kwilu, and the Movement for the Evolution and Development of the Rural Economy of Congo, and those are only the big ones with acronyms over 4 letters. All in all, there were over 50 political parties on the ballot, almost all of which supported
Love just talking as corruption. Yep. Okay.
a federal state that would allow Congo's various regions to remain autonomous. However, the party that got the most votes, the MNCL, led by Patrice Lumumba, wanted a unitary state with a strong...
Oh, is he going to talk about how the CIA assassinated him?
Wrong central government. Nowhere was this more problematic than in the province of Katanga. Katanga had the majority of Congo's precious natural resources, and the many ethnic groups there felt no particular loyalty to the bigwigs in Leopoldville. To Katanga, a unitary state was unacceptable. This dissatisfaction was shared by the leading politician of Katanga, Moise Tshombe, who refused to cooperate with Lumumba's growing coalition government. However, this act of defiance backfired when Lumumba decided to just ignore Katanga, so the province...
Whoa, okay. Wait a minute.
Who refused to cooperate with Lumumba's growing coalition government. However, this act of defiance backfired when Lumumba decided to just ignore Katanga, so the province was basically left with no representation in the new government.
Okay, they're not talking about, like... Because if I remember correctly, the CIA basically murdered Lumumba.
United Congo then officially became independent on June 30th, 1960, with Patrice Lumumba as prime minister and this guy named Joseph Kasavubu as president. However, the young nation was immediately beset with problems.
Problems, you say? Who could possibly be the source of all of these problems? These types of history channels are mildly reactions. It treats a majority important and tragic moments as well. That happened without much care to what happened. Yeah.
Actually, it was kicked and sat on by problems. For one, the new government, for all its enthusiasm, was pretty lacking in experience. The Belgians hadn't exactly been looking forward to Congolese independence, so not much was done to prepare the people or the country. For example, there were only 16 people with college degrees in the entire country at the time of independence, making it the second most uneducated place on Earth after a certain house in Los Angeles. Secondly, even though Congo was gonna be independent, Belgium...
Was that like a Jake Paul joke or something that I don't get?
...didn't want Congo to be actually independent. Therefore, they were actively trying to keep the country weak so that they could exploit it. And then the army mutinied.
This doesn't sound very much like a crisis. It sounds like a revolution.
One condition of Belgium granting Congo independence was that all of the army's white officers had to stay in place. However, in a stunning plot twist, the Congolese soldiers also wanted to be officers and realized that they had most of...
I didn't look into the story too much, but didn't like Jake Paul just get like raided by the feds like 2 days ago? Was there anything more to that? Did they explain why the feds raided Jake Paul's house? What a fucking story.
To the guns already, so you can probably see where that went. Belgium then used this mutiny as an excuse to send in their own soldiers to pacify the country. Just for fun, they also pointed out that the whole thing looked a little communist to them, which was enough to get away with anything in the 60s. The central...
Wow, okay, so there you go. That's they're talking about the Cold War dynamic, about them trying to... Oh my god. There probably should have been a little bit more explanation about how anti-communism allows for the throwing up a squashing of a decolonization movement right there. Come on.
Government in Leopoldville responded to this clear violation of sovereignty by breaking off diplomatic relations with Belgium, but the governor of Katanga, Moise Tshombe, invited the Belgians into his province because screw Leopoldville. Tshombe then got the Belgian army to disarm all federal troops in the region, declared Katanga independent, and began raising a literal mercenary army, which is crazy. Just think about that. Before crocheting was invented, the only weekend activity young men could come up with was going to Africa and killing UN peacekeeping forces. Maybe this generation has gone soft.
Okay.
Anyway, on July 14th, 1960, 2 weeks after Congo gained independence, the UN finally decided that enough was enough, and...
his heart's in the right place. It's just that, it's all told with, this very flippant thing where, this is, a very dark period of world history, especially of Congolese history. If I remember correctly, the, scars of this are still pretty pronounced today. And, I would imagine that if, if Congo was like, if I was Congolese, I would find this an extremely insulting video.
And told Belgium to withdraw their soldiers. However, in order to enforce this, the UN needed some good, hardy, neutral troops. Hi, I like Lefse. I haven't fought a war in like 150 years. Have you heard about IKEA? This was the most neutral country you could find. Switzerland told me to kill myself and then punted me off a mountain. However, as UN forces rolled into Congo, it became clear to Lumumba that they weren't actually that helpful. In their attempt to be a neutral force, the UN wouldn't allow its soldiers to do anything. The UN claimed that it was just a peacekeeping organization and wouldn't engage in offensive operations, but we've all seen what they did in Korea, so we know that's baloney. In the midst of this inaction, the province of South Kasai, supported by the Belgians, also seceded from Congo because screw Leopoldville. Understandably frustrated, Lumumba again asked the UN to help him restore government rule, which the UN again refused. So, with no other options, Lumumba took drastic action. Breaking news! Congo's central government has launched an offensive into South Kasai. And get this, they're using Soviet military equipment.
Here we go.
In response to the Congolese offensive, the UN, with American backing, shut down all of the radio stations in the country in an attempt to disrupt Lumumba's communications and halt his attack, because screw Leopoldville. The president of Congo, Joseph Kasavubu, then dismissed Lumumba as prime minister, which quickly became awkward when Lumumba responded by dismissing Kasavubu as president, effectively leaving Congo without a government. The UN thought that this chaos was bad, so they occupied all of Congo's airports, but the US thought that this chaos was good, and used it to launch a coup to replace Patrice Lumumba, the stinky communist, with Joseph Mobutu, the power-hungry militant authoritarian who at least wasn't...
Well, that, they replaced him. They didn't mention that this was like the CIA... I'm trying to remember, is this the one where they poisoned him, or did they just fucking shoot him? I can't remember. But the CIA basically killed Lumumba to put this, like, this dictator in charge. It's fucking horrible.
Wasn't a dirty commie. With the backing of the CIA, Mobutu then occupied the Congolese parliament, arrested Lumumba, and took over command of the army, but kept Kasavubu on as president because screw Leopold... Wait, that doesn't make sense here. At this point, Congo was split into 4 parts. The central government, run by Kasavubu, controlled the area around Leopoldville. The parts of the government still loyal to Lumumba controlled the area around Stanleyville. Tshombe and his mercenaries still controlled Katanga, and a Belgian-backed...
So the thing is that when what's it called? When a decolonial movement gets its leader assassinated by the CIA, it's always, like, extremely obvious. There you go. The CIA handed him over to Tshombe, who shot him, along with Belgian officials. Lovely.
Secessionist group controlled South Kasai. You got that? Alright, good, because you're going to be tested on it tomorrow.
Well, that was quick.
Arrested by Mobutu, Lumumba was kept under house arrest by UN forces until he escaped to try to meet up with his supporters in Stanleyville. However, on the way, he was captured by Mobutu's forces. Miraculously, though, Lumumba escaped again and was able to flee to a UN base where he begged the soldiers there to protect him. The UN responded by telling him that they were neutral so they wouldn't take sides, and then promptly handed him over to Mobutu's men. Under Belgian pressure, Lumumba was then flown to Katanga, where he was beaten, forced to eat his own speeches, and shot in order to thin out the character list and make this narrative easier to follow. Now that Lumumba was dead, the UN was conveniently given permission to use force, and the 4 factions in Congo finally came to the negotiating table and agreed to start disarming. However, Katanga didn't really do anything with their giant mercenary army, so the UN started to disarm them forcibly until Belgium came in and told the UN that they would take care of it for them. Alright guys, thanks so much for putting all your old weapons in this pile. Because look at all these new ones we got for you!
The, like, amount of, like, war crimes and horror that this is, like, being so jokey about is so, like, I would like I am down for like gallows humor and stuff like that, but gallows humor coming from a presumably white Westerner about some of the most horrible things to happen in 20th century history in the Democratic Republic of Congo is a lot.
The UN then invaded Katanga and forced Tshombe to flee, but on the way to discuss peace, the UN Secretary General's plane crashed and Tshombe just came back again. In November of 1961, the UN, under new leadership, launched another offensive into Katanga and had mostly defeated them by December. A ceasefire then went into effect, and the UN helped Mobutu and Kasavubu reconquer Stanleyville in 1962. However, seeing this redeployment as an opportunity, Tshombe broke the ceasefire and attacked the UN forces, and was immediately crushed and fled to Spain. All of Congo was now back under Kasavubu's control, and the UN figured that they could just pack up and go home, which they did. And then another rebellion broke out in Stanleyville. Unable to defeat the rebels without UN support, Kasavubu invited Tshombe back from Spain to be his prime minister and rehire all of his mercenaries. Tshombe and his personal army then defeated the rebels and reunited the country again. However, now that he had a big army again, Tshombe started talking about wanting to be president instead of Kasavubu. So Kasavubu dismissed him and the two men began a second war. Just kidding, Mobutu and the CIA overthrew both of them and established a one-party dictatorship. Yay, democracy!
Oh boy. Yeah, like, so that's it's so flippant. Like, I'm guessing this guy's like, wow, 64K subscribers. Okay, so he's about the same size channel as mine. Jeez. This is the kind of shit people like, apparently. So I guess I should just, like, make some videos that gloss over extraordinarily painful periods of Congolese history in a way that is very disrespectful of the people who suffered and died in such a thing. Is that the history? Is that the history you crave, everybody? Let's watch another video. That one got me mad. Look at the comments. Oh, God. I don't know if I want to do this. Everybody, the Congo. Last time I was this early, the Congolese still had... Oh, my God. Okay, yeah, that one I don't need. I think we're good. Okay, so this next one is Small Town Throws Pride Parade for Only Gay Resident from The Onion. Oh, this should be good.
Well, today was an historic occasion in Pennington.
That's right, Diane. The entire town turned out to honor Paul Webster, the area's one gay man, with Pennington's first ever Gay Pride Parade. Paul, a 33-year-old hardware store owner, was too shy to ask for a parade, but that didn't stop almost 2,000 residents from showing their support for his homosexuality. Mayor Sue Hallinan organized the parade and even chipped in some of her own money to pay for decorations.
Well, I was channel surfing one day and I came across a program about the Gay Pride. Next time I went to the hardware store, I said, Paul, we're going to throw you a parade. And he just said, oh, please don't do that. I don't want that. I beg you. He just didn't want us to go to the trouble. That Paul.
Apparently, Paul was so modest that he practically had to be dragged out of his house and into the pink limo that took him to the parade, where the whole town was ready to support him.
You beautiful, gay, sexy bitch! You just go for it, girl! You work it out! You're fierce! You're the bomb! You're the gayest, most beautiful thing I've ever seen!
He doesn't want to ride on the penis float. He gets motion sickness, so we're gonna have him hold the reins instead.
After the parade, the town whisked Paul to an information fair held at the local VFW Hall, where Paul was given pamphlets and DVDs about prejudice, AIDS, meth abuse, and other issues of importance to Paul.
I think Paul felt real supported when the whole town stood next to him while Nurse Jill was giving him that AIDS test.
Oh, God.
And Pennictonians have already decided on a fairy tale theme for next year's parade.
Oh, that'll be great.
And if Paul has a boyfriend, they can both be dressed up as kings.
Terrific idea.
Oh, man, so that's like about the whole, like, straights taking over the Pride Parade, and that was just funny. Good old Onion. Always good value. My bad person for finding this funny. I mean, it's making fun of the fact that these, like, white people, or not white people, these straight people are basically just like dictating what pride is to this like, you know, yeah. Do China and Russia hold gay pride parades? Just curious. I don't know about China. I know that they're illegal in Russia because of that gay propaganda bill for some reason. That's depressing. Dude, presenters could be on a real news show. Yeah, it's true. All right, let's see what we got next. So this is debunking Trump on LGBT rights from this sounds like Renegade Cut. It is. Yeah, I think I've seen this video, but we can go into it. This is random too. I didn't know that was gonna have those two together. So this is good.
Stop me if you've heard this one. Two people are discussing President Donald Trump and his administration on television, on social
Romeo.
media, in a YouTube comment section. And person A says the Trump administration is the worst in modern American history.
See, Romeo typically hangs out with Kelly most of the day, but she's in a meeting right now, so Romeo has come to me for attention.
Name one good issue that the administration has handled well. And then person B says, maybe LGBT rights? The administration has been good there. And then person A, having not updated their talking points in about 4 years and having not paid even the slightest bit of attention,
Come on, Romeo.
says, sure, I guess. This is not true. The Trump administration has consistently rolled back non-discrimination protections for LGBT Americans in dozens of ways over the past 3.5 years. The Trump administration has been consistently hostile to the LGBT community. The Trump administration, based on the trajectory of Trump's first term, would almost certainly continue this pattern into a second term. So, why is person B saying this, and why does person A not push back on this? How did Donald Trump manage to make this a talking point that is brought up by Republican politicians and conservative media? Well, the talking point was created during his campaign, and with most of the rollbacks and new discrimination practices rarely making headlines during an administration full of larger scandals and constant shocking stories and bizarre statements, these rollbacks and new discrimination practices just don't last in the news cycle very.
Wasn't Trump the first presidential candidate to ever support gay marriage? I don't think so. I feel like there have been several presidential candidates over the years to support gay marriage.
Long. Do you even remember when the administration removed protections for incarcerated transgender people? Do you remember when Trump fired his entire Presidential Advisory Council on HIV/AIDS? Do you even remember either of those things happening? Well, they did, and 100 other things that made LGBT Americans' lives worse these past 3.5 years. There is only so much space, only so much one can hear before it becomes white noise. It is perhaps the Trump administration's greatest strength. Their constant scandals and
Name one. Let's see. Bernie Sanders.
incompetence
Okay. Let's see. I guess he wasn't a presidential candidate, so what's it called? Hillary Clinton supported gay marriage when it was politically convenient, which was a couple years before the 2016 election. And then, yeah, then you get before that, you get to the 2012 election, which is, I imagine, what's it called? That neither of them, they said, y'all said presidents, not presidential candidates. And like, I don't know, like, just saying that you don't personally object if gay marriage happens doesn't exactly make up for like the massive amounts of rollback of gay rights that have happened in the last 4 years. Okay.
and shocks so much that a lot of it just falls by the wayside to make room for the next worst thing ever. If you stick around, you will get a huge list of what they have been up to in regards to the LGBT community. unassailable evidence that the administration is actually terrible for LGBT Americans. But first, how did we even get here? In 2016, Donald Trump ran a campaign that largely...
What rights do not have? There's been the rollback of anti-discrimination laws against gay people. There has been as you saw, like the firing of the entire council. You know, everything that is in this video right now. Maybe you should pay attention for a little bit and you'll see.
Avoided discussing LGBT rights, and when cornered on the topic, he deflected or couched his answers in economics. For example, when asked about a recent North Carolina law that banned transgender people from public bathrooms, Trump responded that the law was not worth the economic hardship. The law caused problems for...
Oh yeah, they attempt to ban trans people from the military? Like, come on.
North Carolina, with many organizations considering pulling their business. By claiming what everyone else already believed, that the law would cause economic hardship, Trump managed to be on the right side of history in that moment, even if his reasoning was financial and not moral. In the same interview, he was asked if Republican Caitlyn Jenner would be allowed to use the bathroom at Trump Tower, and Trump said yes. Of course, this is such a low bar that anyone could have leapt over.
Obama was against gay marriage until he was in office. And then, yeah, said he supported it in the 2012 election. He had already been in office for 4 years. But he was a presidential candidate. I don't know what you're getting at. Plus, American political discourse around gay marriage changed quite a bit before and after the, the Supreme Court decision. It should have been a lot sooner. Should have been ages sooner. But I imagine that this Bet You Will guy is your typical Trump fascist person. Trans have over 50... Oh my god, okay. It wasn't just an attempt. I thought it got blocked, so alright.
Over it. It was already...
You know how you lower the trans suicide rate is you give them the health care they need. That's about it. That's it. You just need to give them the health care that they need. And in the military, you're supposed to get health care. So just give them health care.
Already the law in New York anyway. Yet, expectations for Republicans are so low that clearing this bar...
What's my take on the 2020 election? I don't like either person running for president right now. I would not fault anybody for not voting for any candidate. I don't live in America, so I can't vote. But if I was in the US and I had the right to vote, I would probably begrudgingly try to get Trump out of office, because you basically vote for who you want to oppose, not who you want to do the things you want, or that's at least the choice right now. Who do we want to fight? And I feel like we could, for the general cause of making things better, we'd be in a lot better situation, I think, trying to put political pressure on the streets on Joe Biden than Donald Trump. So, there you go.
Was remarkable to some pundits and journalists. They hailed Trump as a different kind of Republican.
Not to mention, I don't actually... The growing authoritarianism, especially in the last few months, especially during the whole COVID thing, has shown to me that I think I am pretty convinced that the United States really won't be able to survive another 4 years of Trump. It'll become like actual fascism. America's like precipitously close. Like, it's going to be right under the radar with the now talk about like delaying the election, or now setting up all of the things to basically dispute the results of the election no matter how they turn out. And so with all that considered, like, if this election goes through and the results are conclusive and the results are not disputed and Trump decides to accept the results either way, that is like the last, like, that is a very sketchy, like, last chance for the the United States to have any semblance of being a functional country.
It made no sense, but it sold newspapers and it brought in ratings. It was a talking point based on almost nothing. Whenever then candidate Trump would refer to the LGBT community, he would
Have you listened to It Could Happen Here and or The War on Everyone? Yes, I have. I have listened to both. They are both good.
never speak about protecting their rights, but instead protecting them from the various boogeymen he used to rile up xenophobia and white nativism. According to Parker Malloy of Media Matters, on June 14, 2016, Trump tweeted, "Thank you to the LGBT community. I will fight for you while Hillary brings in more people that will threaten your freedoms and beliefs." The tweet was one of several empty platitudes Trump offered to LGBTQ Americans following the mass shooting at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida, and at first glance it might look like a sign of support. Upon closer reading, it's clear that when he said "fight for you," he wasn't referring to fighting for LGBTQ civil rights at home. Instead, Trump's statement used the community as another justification for his anti-Muslim immigration proposals. In his first speech following the Pulse attack, Trump claimed that he was a friend of women and the LGBT community because, unlike Clinton, he would not allow radical Islamic terrorists to pour into our country, saying, "They enslave women and murder gays." Again, this wasn't a promise to support LGBTQ rights, but a promise to physically protect LGBTQ people from what he considered a hateful foreign ideology, Islam. Trump said almost nothing.
I hate the whole thing of calling Islam a foreign ideology. First of all, it's a religion, not an ideology. Second, Islam has been in America probably since the 1600s in one form or another. So shut up. I have very little tolerance. I have very little tolerance for Islamophobia. As someone who has researched the shit out of it and wrote my master's thesis on Islamophobia. So, yeah, what's it called? I have, every time I hear this shit, it makes me mad.
During his campaign about any...
Do you know what Muslims do to you? I know several Muslims. Several are good friends. I've what's it called? I've not volunteered or anything like that, but I know that the local mosque here in town does a bazaar and is very involved in the interfaith community, and yeah, they're a normal religion, like every other religion on earth. There's also 1 billion Muslims in the world, if not 2 billion. If there's for the record, for anybody on YouTube, there's a troll in the Twitch chat who's trying to say that all Muslims are bad, and it's going to be banned in just a second. But just thought I would just say, Muslims are people. Religion. It's a large religion that encompasses a lot of different types of people with a lot of local variation, with a lot of doctrinal variation within it, and just having a blanket hatred against the second most populous religion on earth because, you don't like the fact that there are brown people, is a very different thing.
Deep sympathy with...
And fairly often, the people who are, the terrorists, are practicing a extremely small and intense subgroup of a subgroup of a group of a sect of Islam. They're an extraordinarily microscopically small part of a very large and mainstream religion. And very often they are born from regional conflicts and regional unrest created mostly by Western imperialism. So maybe if you want to stop terrorism in the world, if you want to stop religious extremism, you could maybe reduce the amount of Muslim majority countries that are currently war zones for imperial oil interests. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
The plight of the LGBT community. He said almost nothing about any proposals to better protect them from discrimination. The mistaken belief that Trump and his administration would protect the rights of LGBT Americans springs partly from propaganda, partly from the media's insistence on making this a story, and partly from an ignorance about the interconnected nature of ideology. A candidate's ideology, or any person's ideology, is a system of ideas and values. More than that, the ideas and values are related, having related origins and related goals. There's a reason why a man who believes that a woman's place...
Yeah, I do have to say, like, a lot of Step Back Renegade Cut collab when, ooh, that'd be fun. I do have to say, like, a lot of what you would call, like, the Muslim extremists are typically come from a very intense version of the Wahhabist sect that is very intense, that is very much based on... So, like, there's this idea in Islam that there were what were called the rightly guided caliphs, which were the first, I want to say, 3 caliphs of the Islamic faith, the first 3 successors to Muhammad. And that after that has sort of been, like, it's been downhill from there. The religion's been through a whole lot, and there's been, ups and downs. The people, especially the people who started ISIS, but to an extent, the people who started Al-Qaeda too, come from a religious movement that believes that we need to go back, society-wise, to the way things were at that early time. It is a thing that has been denounced by the vast majority of Muslim clerics and Muslim scholars. It is not a very well read and very much against Islamic jurisprudence. It is theologically unsound. Fairly often, the people who back it up are not very well educated in Islamic law and Islamic jurisprudence. And on top of that, a lot of the people who are, part of that group actually don't give a shit about the religion part of it. It's usually that it's a group that was willing to give them guns to fight a civil war over something else. So, a lot more complicated than what you're making it out to be. So, that's it. I don't even know why you're talking about Trudeau, but okay. I think it's just time that I stop taking the bait. I think I'm just going to give you the old kick. Wish you well in your future. I hope that you attacked my president. Well, aren't you a little bootlicker? Anyways, bye. All right. Let's keep watching Renegade Cut, because Renegade Cut is good at making YouTube videos.
Is in the kitchen, or that men ought to be higher than women on a social hierarchy, is also likely to believe that gay people should not be allowed to marry, that trans people cannot be trusted, that prayer should be allowed in public schools, and that patriotism is always good and never bad. Because this hypothetical man has been brought up to believe in a set of values that glorify his place in the world as a straight man, probably a white straight man, with the goal of bringing society back to these values to further his place in the world as morally right and logically correct. This is also Trump's base, but that is not actually the point.
So this is the kind of video that I'm thinking is like the reason why I'm making my second channel, because Renegade Cut is supposed to be nominally like a media criticism channel. Like, he does reviews of TV shows and movies, but then randomly makes videos like this. And so I'm thinking like, hey, I'm starting a second channel where I'm going to use it to give myself a little bit more license to talk about things that I want to, instead of like just history, which is nice.
The point is that nobody has just one bad take. If you scratch a homophobe, you will find a transphobe, because these ideals, these values, these individual political positions are related to one's larger ideology.
Phoebe.
None of this means that an ideology of traditional values or any other ideology is completely uniform, nor is it permanent. But the fact that Trump's politics during his campaign were so consistently right-wing should have set off alarms that his courting of the LGBT community was insincere. That should have been enough for the media, but a story is a story, and they went with the story. To their credit, they have begun to wake up about this in a very can't believe the leopards are eating my face kind of way, but the talking point is now so entrenched and the news cycles go so quickly that many are likely to still remember this more than what is actually happening right now. So, what are all these hostile actions and civil rights rollbacks that the Trump administration has taken? Fortunately for anyone trying to put together a timeline, GLAAD keeps track of all of this with over 100 examples.
Why would I watch a Destiny
all
debate?
sourced
I have
with links to media articles.
I have zero I don't see any particular reason why Destiny has any sort of credibility or any sort of like why would I care what Destiny has to say? Destiny is has nothing of value to say about anything. He's shown his full ass of like being completely void of like research. Like, guy doesn't fucking read. Destiny doesn't really read things. He doesn't really like do research. He doesn't. His educational background is being a professional StarCraft 2 player who was very well known for being one of the most like sore losers and biggest whiners in the entire community. Like, I give zero fucks about Destiny.
That confirm these examples. Going through every example would take the whole video, so here is a 6-minute summary of the worst of the worst. This will only take into consideration Trump himself, his advisors under his authority, and the cabinet under his authority, meaning the vice president and the executive departments. The rest of the Republican Party is another topic altogether. On January 20th, 2017, mere minutes after being sworn into office, the Trump administration removed any reference to the LGBT community from White House, Department of Labor, and Department of State websites. On the same day, Mike Pence became vice president. Pence spent his life both in politics and on the radio as one of America's leading anti-gay figures. On February 7th, Betsy DeVos assumed...
Yeah, someone should have thought that, nobody who picks Mike fucking Pence as his VP is going to have any sort of progressive take on LGBTQ rights. Like, come on.
Office as head of the Department of Education. DeVos has ties to anti-gay organizations. On February 22nd, Trump and Attorney General Jeff Sessions removed Title IX protection for transgender students. On March 30th, the Trump administration removed the LGBT community from both the National Survey of Older Americans Act and Annual Program Performance Report for Centers for Independent Living. These are surveys that are used to provide for senior citizens, including disability, transportation, and caregiver needs. On March 28th, the Trump administration announced it would not include LGBT people in the upcoming census, despite a request from the Census Bureau the previous year. On April 14th, the Trump...
Why would they think any Republican would support LGBTQ issues after Reagan? Like, fair. Like, 2016 was supposed to be the one where the Republicans finally started to change their tune on immigration and started to try and court the Latinx community. And the backlash against that was so strong that they elected a literal fascist. Like, to get the Republicans to move on any issue is, like, impossible, it seems.
Administration filed to dismiss a lawsuit in North Carolina alleging anti-gay discrimination. On June 1st, Trump refused to declare June as Pride.
Did you see the garbage fire press conference with the AB education minister yesterday? No. I did hear that Alberta is like... I mean, Ontario is opening schools next month. I don't imagine it's going to last long because schools are just not prepared to handle a pandemic, but also I don't know what the AB education minister did. I think I saw the video on YouTube, but I didn't watch it, or on Twitter.
Pride Month, but did declare it Great Outdoors Month, National Homeownership Month, and National Ocean Month. On June 7th, Trump nominated Stephen S. Schwartz to U.S. Court of Federal Claims. Schwartz worked with North Carolina legislators in support of the anti-trans legislation known as HB 2. On June 15th, Trump rolled back the Office for Civil Rights and their work investigating civil rights complaints and protecting LGBT students. Internal memos revealed the new procedure was to completely dismiss discrimination claims about transgender students needing access to bathrooms. The Department of Education later confirmed this. On the same day, the Department of Education hosted anti-gay groups like Focus on the Family and Family Research Council to a conference on child welfare. Again, on the very same day, the Department of Commerce removed sexual...
Even Canada's trying to open schools. Yeah. Well, Ontario is opening them up in September. It's going to be like very like, as far as I'm learning, because my mom works in education, that all the parents are allowed to opt out and opt into online education for any reason they want. And we're going to find out in about a week how many decided to opt out. And if it's like all of them, then who knows what will happen. But also, the way that I'm hearing about it is that like the first COVID flare-up that happens in any schools, the whole thing's going to get shut down again. That's my guess.
Orientation and gender identity from the agency's equal employment policy. On June 17th, much of the Presidential Advisory Council on HIV/AIDS resigned, saying that Trump does not care about AIDS. Later that year, he fired the rest of the council. Trump nominated Mark Norris to the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Tennessee. Norris supported legislation that allowed counselors to discriminate against LGBT patients. On July 26th, Trump declared a ban on all transgender service members from the military. The ban took effect.
Man, I kind of wish that I didn't ban that bootlicker kid, because like I would just love for this like guy to like point out like, hey, how do you just said he was good for LGBTQ rights. Can you explain all of these?
Effect on April 12th the next year after a long battle in the courts. On August 3rd, Jerome Adams became the Surgeon General of the United States. Adams previously defended Mike Pence during his refusal to help AIDS patients during a crisis in Indiana. On September 7th, Trump nominated Jeff Mateer for the U.S. District Court of the Eastern District of Texas. Mateer is an anti-LGBT activist who once called transgender people Satan's plan. For brevity, no more judicial nominations will be mentioned, but suffice it to say, there are a lot more and a lot worse. These judges will have a deleterious effect on LGBT rights long after the Trump administration. On September 7th, the Department of Justice supported so-called religious exemptions that are often used to discriminate against LGBT people. On October 5th, the Trump administration reversed the Title VII policy that provided non-discrimination protections for transgender people. On October 13th, Trump spoke at an event for anti-LGBT group the Family Research Council. On October 17th, Trump spoke at an event for another anti-LGBT group, the Heritage Foundation. On December 5th, White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders...
Like, it's not even like to say that Trump has any progressive stance on LGBTQ issues is such a joke. Like, literally, like, every single thing he's ever done, except one time mention LGBTQ people, it has been to attack their civil rights.
Told reporters that Trump's position is that business owners should be able to put up signs saying they won't serve gays. On January 18, 2018, the Department of Health and Human Services created a division specifically designed to endorse and protect healthcare workers who refuse to help LGBT patients.
And like also like the religious freedom thing where like, we don't support your kind around here. Like, it's like segregation all over again. I can't believe it. Like, it's so obvious. It's like so overtly obvious is the thing. And if I remember correctly, that back in like the 1970s when they were integrating schools, that they tried the exact same shit. Like the religious right basically became a thing because they started by trying to get religious exemptions to integrated schools because they thought that they were using religion as an excuse to argue for segregation. Like, ugh. It's the same shit, different day. Just new target of discrimination.
On May 11th, the Trump administration rolled back protections for incarcerated transgender people. On October 21st, the Department of Health and Human Services proposed a change to the legal definition of sex, which would remove non-discrimination protections for transgender, non-binary, and intersex Americans. On January 23, 2019, the Trump administration approved a waiver request by South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster, allowing adoption agencies to discriminate against LGBT couples.
Oh yeah, the fact that he thought that that saying Justin Trudeau is bad would make me upset in the same way that making fun of his president is such a fucking joke. That's like the perfect example of like, that's how you know he's a bootlicker, because he's like, you made fun of my president. And it's like, dude, bruh. don't be a fucking bootlicker for the president. There is like, jeez.
On February 8th, the administration confirmed it will be granting federal funds to adoption agencies that use religious exemptions to discriminate against LGBT couples. On April 4th, the Department of Housing and Urban Development refused to reinstate non-discrimination guidelines that would protect LGBT Americans. On April 17th, the Department of Health and Human Services announced that it would no longer collect data on LGBT foster children.
See, like, this is the kind of stuff where, like, this kind of stuff specifically that is being said in this video, this kind of stuff is like, I fucking despise Joe Biden. I do. But if he was president, like, at least this stuff would be slightly under control. Like, something makes me think that Joe Biden would probably not be super progressive on LGBTQ plus issues, but he wouldn't, like, go out of his way to crack down on their civil rights, if that makes sense.
On May 13th, Trump opposed the Equality Act. On May 24th, Trump announced a new policy stating transgender Americans would not be guaranteed health care protections under the Affordable Care Act. On August 14th, Trump urged the Equal Employment Opportunities Commission to allow discrimination against LGBT Americans. On September 20th, the Department of Education removed the terms sexual orientation and gender identity in their data that tracks student bullying.
Oof.
On December 17th, the Trump administration appointed anti-gay activist Tim Wildman to...
Wasn't like half the reason how we had a big moment about bullying like 5 years ago was because it was mostly like homophobic and transphobic bullying that was like the big problem? I don't know.
To the White House Faith Advisory Council. On April 24th, 2020, during the pandemic no less, the Trump administration moved to end a hospital non-discrimination policy. Under this new rule, hospitals and healthcare workers can more easily discriminate against patients based on gender or sexual orientation. On May 28th, the Trump administration threatened to withhold funding for states that allow transgender athletes to compete. On June 14th, the Department of Housing and Urban Development announced it was considering removing a rule that required homeless shelters to allow access to transgender people. On June 22nd, Trump opposed new protections granted to LGBT Americans by the Supreme Court. Trump's press secretary later reinforced Trump's opposition. For about 100 more examples, please check the aforementioned GLAAD article in the description. In the face of all these rollbacks and new forms of discrimination, how does the Trump administration manage to keep this talking point going among its base? What are its counters to this? They have 3, and they are all easily debunked. The first is that if the economy is good, then the economy is good for everyone, including LGBT people. This is the same deflection for whenever Trump's unambiguous racism is pointed out. Someone, or Trump himself, will say that the economy is good, and since everyone benefits from the economy, then he can't be racist or homophobic.
Whoopsie doodle. First of all, that's like bullshit neoliberal thinking. But the next line is that the economy is in a full-blown implosion right now.
This is obviously a weak argument, as whether unemployment is up or down is not related to opposing or supporting policies related to discrimination. As weak as it was already, it has fallen apart even further in 2020. The second deflection is that Trump has not reversed the same-sex marriage ruling.
He can't. It's in, like, what's it called? The Supreme Court decision.
This is another weak argument, because the ruling was from the Supreme Court. The Trump administration does not have the authority to reverse the same-sex marriage ruling. It's particularly weak because Trump has, on numerous occasions, remarked that he opposes same-sex marriage. The third argument...
Oops. What's it called? We need the bootlicker back to have seen that exact sentence.
Is that the Trump administration set up a global initiative to end the criminalization of homosexuality. This is another weak argument because this is only another version of the initiative from the previous administration, not something new, and it is apparently a less active version of it. It is also unremarkable to believe homosexuality should be decriminalized in the year 2020, as it was decriminalized in much of the world a long time ago, certainly in the United States. In some countries, it was never even a crime. This is not a radical statement in 2020. It was not even a radical statement 50 years ago. So this is all garbage. Other arguments amount to whataboutism about Barack Obama or Joe Biden, and if you want to use that logical fallacy, sell it to someone who actually identifies with the Democratic Party. This is how the Trump administration responds to questions about its terrible LGBT rights record. Listen to the reporter, and then immediately as LGBT rights come up, watch the press secretary search for her binder for the stock answer to any question about said rights.
We're coming up on the
This should be
3-year
funny.
anniversary of the president tweeting he banned transgender people from the military in any capacity.
Phoebe wants
with
attention
the
because she's
policy
hungry and she
currently
wants me to
in
go
place.
feed her.
Last week, a group of 116 lawmakers...
She does this every day around 4 o'clock.
...wrote the administration urging them to lift the policy. Would the president reconsider the policy?
So don't expect this to stop anytime before the end of the stream. This is what Phoebe does basically until I feed her from like 4 o'clock onwards.
Launched a global initiative to end the criminalization of homosexuality throughout the world.
See? Any question about their dismal record of rollbacks and new discrimination policies can't be answered. So whenever a policy is brought up, the press secretary says she doesn't know anything about that, and then deflects into referencing one of the 3 aforementioned weak defenses. In this case, the global initiative, that is mostly a farce and nothing new. They can't respond to their record, so they built in nonsense answers, and apparently the latest empty press secretary is still looking at her cue cards instead of memorizing her lines. According to Pink News, the official 2020 Republican...
Trista's a cruel papa who has never ever fed Kitty. I haven't fed her since yesterday.
Platform has not changed anything from the 2016 Republican platform, which condemned same-sex marriage and called for the right to discriminate against LGBT Americans. This is the platform, meaning this is what Trump is running on. There is no reasonable argument that Trump was...
You sell weapons to Saudi Arabia. How are you decriminalizing homosexuality? Yeah, for real. That's the thing you can also say about fucking what's it called? This is one thing that I always harp on that everyone forgot about, which is that Justin Trudeau, in order to keep jobs actually here in London, Ontario, sold a bunch of weapons to Saudi Arabia, despite saying that he was the woke feminist pro-LGBT president or prime minister, and then he signed arms deals with Saudi Arabia,
is or ever will be good or even passable on LGBT issues. His ideology is a series of blunt prejudices, and
he did hide behind not wanting to cancel the Harper deal, and then it became very quickly exposed that that didn't matter.
Narcissism, and the embarrassingly bad arguments that defend him are easily debunked.
We have an estimated 14,000...
That's a good video. I like it. I don't have much to comment on because he's just, Renegade Cut's just a good YouTuber who makes good YouTube videos. My only response to that is, yeah, what he said. Let's see what we got next.
Just yesterday.
So this is The Onion again. After Obama victory, shrieking white hot sphere of pure rage. Early GOP frontrunner for 2016. I knew that this is like a pretty popular Onion article that gets passed around every once in a while, but I didn't know that this is happening. That they made a video. Plus, also white. I learned in the news that there's looking at some people selling off their stock dividends, that it's looking fairly likely that Susan Rice and not Kamala Harris is going to be the VP pick for Joe Biden, and because of that. I imagine that the white hot ball of rage is probably going to be the K-Hive when they fucking have a meltdown next week when Joe Biden announces Susan Rice as his VP candidate.
Barack Obama was reelected to a second term as president, but that doesn't mean it's too early to start looking ahead at potential GOP candidates for 2016. Some experts say a front-runner has already emerged in the form of this shrieking white-hot sphere of pure rage. The sphere seen here decimating homes in a small Maryland town is testing through the roof with conservatives who were disappointed with Obama's victory last night. Jason Copeland, why is this thing so popular?
Well, Andrea, look, this screaming orb just might be the only one who really taps into the deep-seated, seething fury felt by so many Republicans right now.
That's true.
This thing is young, it's exciting, it feeds off fear and terror. It's no wonder conservatives are raving about it.
Mitt Romney just didn't get me fired up enough to vote. But that sphere of anger really speaks to me, usually through my television or in my nightmares. It's got me building this hive.
Now, we know the thing is popular, but does this rage...
Yeah, The Onion basically predicted Trump here.
sphere actually want to run for president?
Well, Andrea, it hasn't said no. I mean, when interviewed, the howling conservative plasma orb reportedly said, quote, a loud whirring sound, some unintelligible shrieks, bow before me, more piercing violent shrieks, guns, not our America, and then it just repeated faggots at a deafening pitch for hours and hours.
Okay, but that sounds pretty non-committal,
Well,
Jason.
that's right. I mean, look, you know, for public...
Forgot that you could get away with saying shit like that in 2012. Dear God.
Republicans want this thing to run. They're going to have to find some way to trap it, communicate with
Absolutely.
it, steer it in the right direction. Some conservative leaders have already begun offering sacrifices of virgins and livestock, which is a good first step, obviously.
And Jason,
so,
now,
I mean,
we are getting some breaking news right now that the sphere is making further political inroads. Apparently, Senator Richard Burr of North Carolina has just an hour ago resigned his seat in the Senate to the beast. In an official statement that we have here, Burr said, quote, it will do better than I ever could. Nowhere to run. Lead me to my end. I am worthless. It owns us. That's a quote, Jason.
Big development there.
Yeah, so grows the orb. Now, Jason, is it too soon to speculate as to who the sphere might pick as its running mate?
Well, I can't see the sphere picking anyone other than the dark, ominous cloud of racism that the Republicans love so much.
Oh, right. I mean, it's been around for years. It has experience.
And if the party gets serious about its ground game in Iowa and the maelstrom's able to maintain cohesion without exploding and exterminating life on this planet, I think we can expect the announcement of a white-hot sphere horrible lurking fog ticket as early as Christmas 2015.
Thank you, Jason. Later in the hour,
Thanks,
we'll
Andrea.
take an in-depth look at some early frontrunners for the Democrats, including Joe Biden, Martin O'Malley, and the magical arc of empty promises.
That was a good video. God damn, The Onion. The Onion, man! Okay, the next one is a tweet I got here. So let's switch to Twitter mode. There we go. Look at that. Look at me doing things. So this is a tweet from the Midnight Society. Koji Suzuki, submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society. I call the tale of the spooky little girl. How spooky, you ask? Well, get this. She had long hair. Sometimes it even covers part of her face. You don't really like... Okay. Yeah, let's get this. This is like a joke about Japanese horror, I guess. I don't know. Let's do something. I want more fun. I want to do something good and fun. So let's do this one.
Be live.
Fucking, this is gonna hurt. So it's from 2016. This is a 48-minute video, so we're not gonna watch very much of this, but goddamn, Michael Brooks, R.I.P. bud. But let's see if this good. Let's see where we can go with this.
And then we'll post it up later, and we'll just add a picture for you, and put it in the frame. And yeah, I mean, I think you have a sense of it. I'll sort of set the conversation up, and then we'll just take it from there.
Yeah.
Hey, Birdie's back.
Sounds good. It's what time is it over there?
9:30 at night.
Okay, great. So not too. Are you in London?
No, but near it.
Okay, cool. I almost was in London a couple years ago, but I didn't know I was gonna go to LSE, but ended up deciding not to go. All right. Are we all set? We set, Kelly? All right. So we'll be live in about a couple of. We're live whenever. All right.
Let's see where this goes. I don't know. I'm not going to sit around for 48
Welcome
minutes.
To a Majority X debate between Michael Brooks and Sargon. You're not like Sargon of Akkad, because forgive me,
I also forgot that like back in the day that these people actually took Sargon seriously. Like this is like what's it called? 2016 before he was basically outed as a complete like hack, and like I don't know. I mean, he was a hack back then, but like for some reason people took him seriously because I guess everyone was just like, you know, everyone took it seriously because everyone was like, so this like white nationalist reactionary stuff seems to be very applicable. Should we like listen to people?
Sargon of Iberius, but this is Sargon of Akkad, and we are going to be debating the progressive left meme, terrorism, Islam, the Middle East, and figuring it all out together. I know people are watching on the live stream. We'll obviously post this again later after it's all over. And before I go further, I want to welcome Mr. Sargon himself. Sargon, how are you?
Hi there, very well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Glad to have an opportunity to have this this confrontation with you, this friendly confrontation. So, I guess we'll sort of start this conversation off. This is how it went, because I do a segment for Majority X, which is the Majority Report's YouTube channel, called Debunked, where I take ideas like Barack Obama's a secret Black Panther, or something equally as ludicrous as that, and I'll do a debunk. And I went after this meme that I see a lot on social media of this quote-unquote regressive left. And you had a response to that, to my video, where you attempted to take it down. But let me first frame the argument so everyone remembers what I basically am arguing in that video and beyond. There's sort of three core areas here to this debate. Number one is that a lot of people who and look, first, before we go any further, I want to concede right out of the gate that if we're doing
the quartering is like this like this guy who, let's be honest, like has a lot of the same physical features as I do, but focuses all of his energy. We have like one precious life, you know. I'm approaching like probably like the halfway mark of this, you know, one precious life that we get in this universe, and the quartering chooses to use that brief spark of existence in space to get mad that She-Ra doesn't have big boobs anymore, or you know, just get mad that gay people are in thing he watched, and it's so pathetic to think about like that. That is the thing. That is the thing he decided he had one shot at life, and he was like, this is the thing this is what I want to be known for. In 100 years, they're going to talk about who is this quartering guy, and it'll be like, this guy who, I mean, he got banned from Magic the Gathering for being a creep, and now he just got really mad that WOMs
sort of hunting on social media for people writing stupid things. We can find examples of anything. So I'm sure that there are some people who have justified, you know, even terrorism in some instances. There's people who've justified human rights abuses because of a kind of a delusional cultural relativism.
Right,
I
okay.
did it.
So we agreed from the gate.
So we
there
could
is such a thing as the regressive left.
Well, not in the way.
You just said it existed.
Hold
up.
The
end conclusion of your video was the regressive left doesn't exist.
So I'm going to explain that. So it exists as, in the same way Bernie Bros exist, in the sense that yes, you can find maybe one or two examples of people writing dumb things, but as a large, organized, politically effective force, no, it does not. And I'm going to explain the three... Wait, hold up. I'm going to explain the three variables, and then you can go ahead.
Okay, go.
Okay. So number one...
God, this guy has no decorum.
That the sort of prime people driving it are people who seem to be like yourself, unfortunately, that are people who want to claim the term liberal, but also engage in lazy, ahistorical generalizations about Islam. So that's why this term floats around a lot. Number two,
fucking just summarized him in one sentence.
People who do not want to do the actual homework and take on the intellectual challenge of, as an example, studying history, studying policy, understanding why we are where we are with an issue like Islamic.
Let's hear it again. Sure.
Or Islamic. Two, it seems to appeal to people who do not want yourself, unfortunately.
Okay, go.
Okay.
All right, let's do this.
So number one.
So good. This is like, you just summed up Sargon of Akkad's entire existence in like one sentence, and I loved it.
It doesn't exist for that. The sort of prime people driving it are people who seem to be like yourself, unfortunately, that are people who want to claim the term liberal, but also engage in lazy, ahistorical generalizations about Islam.
Fuck, that like basically summarizes the entire like that's Sargon. Lazy, ahistorical generalizations about Islam. Like that is basically more or less the entire description of a lot of Islamophobes. All right, I want to hear the rest. And then, I don't know, if things don't pick up, we might have to move on to something else because we're getting close to the end of the stream. And actually, why don't we just ride this out until the end of the stream? This is long. We've got about 10 minutes left, so... How do you feel about the term delusional cultural relativism? I'm lukewarm towards it.
So that's why this term floats around a lot. Number two, it seems to appeal to people who do not want to do the actual homework and take on the intellectual challenge of, as an example, studying history, studying policy, understanding why we are where we are with an issue like
God, he's
Islamic,
cutting right to the bone.
Terrorism or Islamic extremism. These are people...
Man, we really lost a fucking champion, didn't we? God damn. This is like the first time I've like listened to like a whole lot of Michael Brooks, I'll be honest. Like I didn't listen to Majority Report just because I don't really listen to that many podcasts. I don't actually... My media diet is fairly weird, so I like was in and out on Majority Report and stuff like that. Like I kind of stick to only like a handful of podcasts. But god damn, this guy is like, this is very incisive and very good, and seems to have a good respect for history too, which makes me like all the sadder that that he's no longer with us. Tristan's media diet is basically just Mia Mulder videos and Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, a little bit. I watch a handful of YouTubers. I mostly have to work as hard as I can to just keep up with all of the YouTubers that I am personally friends with. And then my podcast diet is mostly like, well, there's your problem, Chapo Trap House, the Behind the Bastards, The Worst Year Ever, and like, I Don't Speak German. So, yeah. So this is, yeah. I'm really sad. I'm really sad that the first time that I've gotten to enjoy Michael Brooks's amazing takedown here is after his passing.
People who don't want to engage in a conversation on, as an example, who funded Wahhabism and the role of Saudi foreign policy in developing that, and the role of Western policy in developing Saudi foreign policy. These are much more complicated discussions than just internet memes. And people who use the term regressive left almost always want to avoid them. Number three, the reason it's a problem to talk in a reductionist and dumb way about Islam is not because it's PC or it hurts people's feelings or all this other mishigas. That's Hebrew. Yiddish, by the way. The reason is because we need to be very smart and very precise and very strategic in understanding these issues, precisely because terrorism is an important issue, as is multiculturalism, as is the quest for human rights and reform within not just Islamic countries, but in fact globally. So when we make dumb, generic overgeneralizations about Islam, we undermine the work of people like Fatima Mernissi, as an example. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She was a prominent Moroccan Islamic feminist. Asma Jahangir, who's a Pakistani human rights attorney who's worked in Pakistan for several
Very good people.
decades. Khatami.
Man, the guy really knows his shit. This is like all of the Islamic Islamic feminists and Islamic human rights people. This is so good.
Ahmed Musali, who were both Islam and democracy theorists.
You could just tell that I can just picture in my head Carl just furiously Googling all of these people to try and read one sentence so he can do a takedown. That's what I'm guessing. Because he's on, this is a pretty big platform for him to be on. And I imagine that he's just absolutely just frantically trying to figure something out. Someone asked how I met Mia Mulder, and I met Mia Mulder because she was on the Miracle on Twitch in January of 2019, which was the what's it called, the mermaid stream that H Bomber guy did. I heard her on the stream near the end, and I reached out to her because I wanted to have her on my what's it called, Subscriber Appreciation Day stream. And we had the stream, and we really hit it off on the stream. We had a really good time talking to each other, and we basically just have been friends back and forth ever since. And when I decided I wanted to stream at a European friendly time, that I would try to see if I could get somebody to bounce off of, and Mia was the first person who came to mind. Is I Don't Speak German something I should start from the beginning, or more recent stuff? I Don't Speak German is a podcast that is very much about current events, so you don't really need to, it's not serialized or anything like that. You can just start whenever. It's a podcast analyzing the far right, is I Don't Speak German. It's a podcast of analyzing basically it's a couple of people who are doing basically investigative journalism, ongoing investigative journalism on neo-Nazis and such.
Working on theories of reconciling Islam with democracy. Now, these projects may or may not be successful.
Sorry, Phoebe sat on the keyboard.
You're saying that you are compassionate and concerned about the human rights dimensions of what is happening inside Islamic societies, and then you turn around and you say that Islam is one monolithic thing, or the motherload of bad ideas, which you co-signed on in your video attempting to take me down, then, okay, so you absolutely...
Does I Don't Speak German ever cover Maxime Bernier? I've only been listening to the podcast. I only started listening to it a couple months ago, and they haven't yet. Because, Maxime Bernier hasn't really been relevant in, coming up on a year now.
They did. Okay, so great. When you co-sign on that, and then you say you want to support reformists within the Muslim world, you're engaging in a performative contradiction, and again, avoiding doing the actual legwork of the real historical, real policy investigation that is required to forward what you claim.
The best thing about Maxime Bernier, so there's this political party called, is it the Rhinoceros Party or something like that? There's a political party that basically does jokes. And one of the things they did is, in Maxime Bernier's writing, they actually found another Maxime Bernier to run for the party. And so... on the ticket, there was actually two Maxime Berniers on the ticket because they got a Maxime Bernier to run for the Rhinoceros Party.
You want. So the conclusion is that it's a thing that exists in tiny pockets. It's vastly inflated in terms of its importance. People who inflate it in terms of its importance don't want to do policy or history or geography or economics. And as a result of not wanting to do policy, history, geography, or economics, it leads to dumb ideas, bad policy, simplistic and delusional understandings about very important things. Look, I don't play video games, so I don't make YouTube videos about them. It's important to have a grasp in the ground of what you're talking about.
Okay, I think that's a perfect conclusion to end the stream on, because it's actually 5 o'clock already, and Tristan wants to go get supper and get back to work because my D&D game got canceled for tonight, so I am going to be spending my evening working on my next video because I have been, my days have been a little bit tied up working on stuff for Mexi and also working on the second channel. So I think that's going to be my evening. But this has been a real joy, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out. You want to hear Carl's dumb response? We are out of time, so unfortunately we cannot. So thank you all for coming out. I'll be back on my next stream is going to be on Monday. Hopefully we'll get me some Mia Mulder in here, and we'll have a nice little chat. Of course, if you want to add to the Reactor, you can tweet #StepBackReact on Twitter, or you can join the Discord server. I'll put a Discord server link for everybody. I'll put an invite in the chat for everybody. You can follow that link. You can follow that link, and once you join up, you can, submit things that you want to be added in. And then, I every week I collect them all, and then I randomize the whole list, and I shake it all up. So we'll go with it since then. Anyways, I'll see you guys later, and oh yes, I have to not forget to do this for everybody on Twitch. We're going to raid somebody cool. We're gonna go raid. Ooh, who's good? Let's go raid Rocketansky. Let's do that. It's been a bit since I've seen Rocketansky has had some health things, so her streaming schedule's been a little bit all over the place. So let's give her some love, shall we? Let's all show Rocketansky that we Step Back viewers are good friends, and show support. Anyways, everybody, take care.